This young man was stunned by everyone when suddenly a big book hit him right on the head. Instinctively, he jumped up, and facing Jasper was a face full of anger. Jasper Raymond. I know you're clever, but how dare you fall asleep in my class? You're really bold, Vassal. Just now you were drooling in your sleep and then got hit on the head. At this moment, he put on the most stunned look possible because the person standing in front of him was Professor Hubert. He had long since passed away. How could he appear here? Vassal looked around it in confusion and realized that all around him were faces he hadn't seen for a long time. He then looked down at himself and was shocked to realize a terrifying truth: he had returned to the past. Time seemed frozen. Russell couldn't believe he had traveled back in time. Professor Hubert witnessed all the emotions on his face, not knowing what he was thinking, only furrowing his brow and sighing, "Your behavior today is unlike you at all, but you're still punished to leave the classroom." Just like that, Russell was kicked out of class right after time traveling. He really never thought he would one day travel through time and wondered if this could be considered magic. Here he recalled the last moment of his previous life. The strange voice said that when the other eyes awaken, you will become the foundation for creating a new mythology. So prove yourself worthy for the future of the new mythology. I will grant you another chance. Vassal didn't know who owned that voice, but was certain it was the power that brought him back to the past. Speaking of which, Vassal looked down at his left hand and found his dragon eye ring was gone. This ring was left by his mother. Could it have been her spirit helping him back then? While Jackson was lost in thought, Professor Hugo pushed the door open and stepped out. The class had ended, but he still felt that the sleeping incident during class didn't seem like Jackson at all. So he wanted to talk privately and invited him to his office during lunch break. Vassal bowed his head low, saying he remembered, then sneaked a glance at the professor's retreating back. A hard-to-describe emotion rose. Vassal couldn't remember how long it had been since he last got into trouble at school like this, but the feeling was nice. Compared to being a washed-up noble struggling to survive school life, really was paradise. Just as he thought this, someone hit him hard on the head again. Reflexively, he held his head and shouted, "What kind of damn joke is this?" "Huh, what damn joke?" Vassal turned around and saw the three jerks who just hit him laughing. Then a fat one among them even wanted to add another slap, "You look way too relaxed, punk." But before he could strike, he was stopped by his own friend because the teachers were still around. Openly bullying classmates like this would get them into big trouble. Then that guy turned cold and questioned, "I'm sure I told you to copy my notes, so how dare you fall asleep during class?" Squinting, he realized this was Coma Frederick. It had been a long time since he saw this jerk, but he was just as hateful as in his memories. "All right, if you don't want to die, come with me to the bathroom right now," he threatened. Then the three thugs went ahead while Vassal laughed helplessly. Right, it had been so long that he almost forgot these things had happened before. But because he time-traveled, fate would also change just like this. Jackson received the system. At this moment, the system window appeared in front of him. Jackson remembered that before he lost consciousness, this thing had also appeared. But until now, he still didn't know exactly what it was. On the status window, a few lines announced a new mission: escape from bullying and teach the three thugs in the class a lesson. The reward for the mission was a low-level magic stone. So Rascal looked confused at the object floating in front of him. It looked like a hallucination because his hand could pass right through the screen. Also, what exactly was a low-level magic stone? Besides Rascal, no one seemed to see this thing. So when the ghosts saw him standing there dazed, they were extremely annoyed. "Hey, what are you doing?" "Not following. You know, running away won't work, right? We're currently inside the academy. But if you're scared, go ahead and try running," Coma said with a wicked smile. At this moment, Vassal had already decided to give up researching what that system window was. After all, he had to teach these school thugs a lesson. Although now, back in a teenager's body, Jackson's soul was still that of a man who had lived many years as a mercenary. With the experience he gained from monsters in his past life, these three were just kids who hadn't even wiped their noses yet. When Jackson entered the bathroom, all three were already waiting. Their eyes gleamed excitedly at him like looking at a toy, as if they could pounce on him any time. Finally. "So you dared to come in here, you little larva?" Coma took a drag from his pipe and asked, but he didn't expect Jackson to immediately snap back, "Of course I have to, you damn leaf." All three were stunned by his words. They felt shocked, either still half asleep or completely crazy. That's why they dared to act arrogantly toward me. The same white-haired fat guy struck first. He seemed to be a loyal subordinate of Coma. But when he charged at Jasper, he was dodged with unbelievable speed. At the same time, Jasper landed a sharp counterattack. A punch from Jasper hit the opponent's stomach, causing him to see stars before falling backward. The trashy subordinate screamed. This guy was even worse than his friend. Before he could act, Jackson defeated him. Moreover, this time he punched him straight in the face. Now only Coma and Jackson were left standing. But he was not only unafraid, he also taunted Jackson for not being able to use magic. So you learned some cheap martial arts moves. Truly nothing better can be expected from a fallen family. Even though we can't use magic in the academy, you don't seem to know I have a few small artifacts. Saying that, Coma threw away his pipe and strapped some equipment onto his right hand. Then he aggressively charged at Jackson. Thought his artifact would be impressive. But in the end, Coma's punch was still blocked by Jackson. Clearly, Jackson was much smaller, but his hand gripped Coma's tightly. He even twisted it backward. The pain left that bastard unable to move, nor could he pull his hand away. Kuma Frederick, your brothers have already taken your spot on the ranking board. Even your family has abandoned a fool like you. When facing strong opponents, you'll cower and avoid. But when facing the weak, you bully them without hesitation. A trash bastard like you dares to mention my family? Coma collapsed to his knees, partly from pain, partly from oppression. Jackson's terrifying disbelief clearly caused panic on his face, especially when he saw Jackson's other hand curling into a fist. Wait, Vassal, listen to me. He tried to bargain and struggle, but couldn't stop Vassal's actions. In the end, all three were beaten flat on the ground by the one they always looked down on and bullied. Before leaving the bathroom, Vassal didn't forget to leave them a warning from now on: behave properly if you still want to keep your lives. However, after leaving the bathroom, Jasper quietly found a corner and sat down. It seemed he was exhausted in the body of a teenager just now. At that moment, the system window danced in front of him again. Notification: Jasper has completed the mission and received a low-level magic stone. A magic stone sprouted from it and fell into his palm. The system window also emphasized that this item could be consumed, making Jackson highly suspicious. That system wants me to eat this magic stone. Vassal looked at the magic stone with suspicion. After all, even the forest people don't eat stones, so why should I eat this? But seeing the system window still hovering, criticizing this strange idle thing appearing just for him must be destiny's arrangement. Then the system must also be a guidance from fate. So after some hesitation, Vassal still put that stone into his mouth. The text on the system window immediately changed. This time it was a notification that Jackson had successfully absorbed a low-level magic stone. Right after that, his body reacted. A burning sensation spread throughout, and Jackson could clearly feel his heart pounding excitedly. The system again notified that he had received mana contained in the magic stone, causing the mana in the magic circle to increase. This one didn't need to be read in the notification book to be felt. He had never felt mana overflow like this before. It was continuously being gathered by the magic circle surrounding his heart. After absorbing for about a minute, that chaotic feeling finally stabilized. Vassal seemed to see a glimmer of hope through this. It seemed that if he kept following the system's guidance, he would overcome his narrow mana flow curse. Then the collapse of his family being expelled from the academy or becoming a third-rate mercenary mage, he could completely change that tragic fate. Thinking of this, Vassal felt a surge of determination. He stood up and went straight to Professor Hubert's room. The professor was already sitting on the sofa. The tea was brewed. It seemed like he was waiting for him. As soon as Vassal sat down, the professor started speaking immediately. Vassal, you don't seem like yourself today. Are you having some difficulties? I heard other students have been bullying you. At first, Jasper seemed tense, but after Professor Hubert said that, the feeling faded. In his previous life, the professor always helped him. It seemed this life was no exception, and Jasper had always regretted not saying these words sooner. You don't need to worry, sir. Thank you very much, Professor. Yes, as a professor, I naturally have to take care of my students. If not, then good, but you will still be punished for falling asleep during my class. Hubert sighed in relief, seeing he was okay. However, the punishment the professor gave Jasper was to write an analysis report from page 62 to page 74 of the Advanced Elemental Studies. This was a section even upperclassmen struggled with. So Professor Hubert warned him beforehand that this would not be easy. As he pushed the Advanced Elemental Studies book towards him, then the system window appeared again. It automatically turned the professor's request into a new mission, and the reward for completing it would depend on the quality of the report and the professor's satisfaction. Specifically, a low-level magic stone along with an undisclosed item. Seeing Jasper's confused expression, Professor Hubert thought his punishment was too harsh and gave a sly smile. What's wrong? Too hard. No, sir. Thank you, teacher. Jasper immediately replied and hugged the Advanced Elemental Studies book as he returned to his dorm. Actually, this assignment was not difficult for him, because in his previous life, due to limited mana flow capacity, he had plunged into studying theory to compensate. Even after becoming a mercenary, he never stopped learning, and that knowledge was still deeply ingrained in his mind. But this life, a new path had opened, and something else just as important as theoretical study was mana flow training. Mana flow is the path mana travels throughout the body. It is absorbed through respiration, flows through the mana channels, and accumulates in the heart. From there, mages can release mana to create magic. In other words, the stronger the mana flow, the more mana you can gather. Also, the faster you can release mana. But as mentioned, Vassal was born with an extremely narrow and weak mana flow. This caused him many difficulties in combat and forced him to live a wasted life. Up to now, having been reincarnated, he still couldn't forget those things, and sincerely wondered if returning to the past was fate sympathizing with his misfortune or just a simple stroke of luck. Regardless of the cause, Vassal was determined to seize this chance to change his fate. Afterwards, he relied on memories from his previous life to find an ancient historical relic of unknown origin. Inside, there were 2 hidden magic books. The abundant flow entered the mage's body, nourishing it and compensating for the major mana flow deficiency. Meanwhile, the mage's body replaced muscle fibers and turned them into part of the mana flow. In other words, the healthier the body, the stronger the mana flow. In his previous life, he discovered these 2 books when his body was already that of an adult. So no matter how much he trained, it didn't change much. But in this life, since his body belonged to a teenager, still developing the effects would definitely be more noticeable. That's why Vassal began a crazy streak of intense training. Every day he pushed himself to train until sunset, or until he was completely exhausted. Of course, during this process, the mysterious system accompanied him by issuing some tasks like running 5 kilometers to practice the abundant mana magic. Vassal obediently followed its instructions, even though it was very hard because it was a rare opportunity. So he absolutely couldn't afford to miss it. He kept running until his legs were limp and he was gasping for air. But since he hadn't reached the 5-kilometer mark, he kept going. The task was only completed late at night. Exhausted to the point he couldn't move, he just collapsed on the grass. And he had no idea that while he was training, a pair of eyes was silently watching him. At the same time, this mysterious figure smiled mockingly. Futile effort. Russell Raymond. A few days later, Russell submitted his report to Professor Hubert. The professor was extremely surprised that Russell could draw such insightful conclusions based solely on the academic materials he provided. He was sure Russell had personally prepared this report. Professor Hubert was even a bit skeptical. "Yes, can you swear by mana to guarantee this?" Russell confidently replied. His attitude was very self-assured, and mentioning the oath so straightforwardly finally reassured Professor Hubert about the report's authenticity. He was also very satisfied with it. Therefore, the reward Russell received was quite generous. Specifically, besides low-level magic stones, Russell also received support gems of the same size and knowledge about the art of summoning monsters. Thanks to that knowledge, he gained effects that boosted magic power, reduced mana consumption, and shortened spell-casting time. Russell was very happy. This also meant the deeper his knowledge, the stronger he would become right. If so, an idea suddenly popped into Russell's mind. He took the opportunity to ask Professor Hubert for a favor to let him use the department library. "May I ask why the student library already has enough books to meet your needs?" Hubert cautiously asked. But Russell said he had already read all the books in the student library. This answer left Professor Hubert somewhat stunned. Even if that was true, using the department library was another matter. And Professor Hubert had to consider whether Russell was qualified to receive this privilege. So he immediately assigned him 10 reports, which were, of course, digitized as system tasks. Vassal was a bit overwhelmed by the volume of assignments the professor gave him, but they suited Hubert's style perfectly. After all, he was known for being strict. The more deeply one understood theory, the stronger the magic. So this little challenge wouldn't be hard for Russell. He had to complete them at all costs to access the advanced knowledge in the professor's library. Moreover, since the reward for completing tasks was magic stones that improved mana flow, Russell had even more reason to strive. So Russell diligently practiced the 2 ancient, abundant mana flow spells and seriously completed the reports assigned by Professor Hubert. But living peacefully was really difficult. because the very next day someone came to cause trouble for Russell Vassal Raymond. I heard you carry the cursed mana flow, but you look like some kind of training maniac. My friend has suffered big losses because of you. Vassal recognized this person. He was Anton Frederick. The reason this guy came here, you could guess it just by thinking with your knees. So what, you guys came for revenge? Anton burst out laughing after hearing this question. Me revenge you. Don't be delusional. Who would bother taking revenge on a worthless jerk like you? Just trampling you underfoot is enough. See you in class. It seems like people with the surname Frederick all have unpleasant personalities like this. Anton didn't intend to beat Russell senseless right here because he complained there was no audience for him. Instead, this jerk wanted to embarrass him in front of many people. And Russell quickly guessed that the class he mentioned was the Practical Magic Combat class, where students are graded based on sparring match results. That was also the place where he was most despised and bullied in his previous life. For a moment, Russell had forgotten those painful memories, but Anton reminded him to remember. It's just that this life he had changed and was ready for that challenge. At that moment, the system window popped up with a new mission requiring Russell to reach the second magic ring and expand his understanding of the skills he currently possessed. Time was running out, so he continued to train like crazy, training during the day and writing reports at night. Even Professor Hubert was shocked when he saw the thick stack of reports Russell had completed in such a short time. But thanks to knowledge accumulated from his past life, all those reports satisfied him. Seeing the mission completion notice and reward points constantly popping up in front of him, Vassal felt extremely happy. Now he had obtained 10 low-level magic stones. However, Vassal felt a bit cautious last time he barely managed to absorb one, so would his mana flow be strong enough to control all these magic stones? He feared his body might explode, but after thinking it over, he decided to trust the results of his hard training so far. So he consumed all 10 stones at once. The reaction happened very quickly and was completely different from before. Vassal felt like his body was thrown into a crematorium. The scorching heat from inside seemed like it wanted to burn him to ashes. But Vassal didn't lose his mind because he knew what he needed to do was quickly create a new mana flow. He tried to control the pain to identify the next mana flow. He twisted it and tried to form a new magic ring. Vassal put all his strength into this because if he failed, his heart probably wouldn't take it. Clearly a dangerous gamble, but this life Vassal was determined not to live safely. And the reward for risking his life was the second mana ring. As Vassal's body gradually stabilized, his energy was completely drained. He collapsed on the floor, too exhausted even to read new system notifications. But after completing this mission, Vassal gained quite a bit of knowledge about his magic attributes, and the mana of those magics was also enhanced. At dawn, Vassal dragged his tired body to meet Professor Hubert to submit his final report. He told him he had completed all assignments, which made the professor very pleased. But the strict professor still wanted to ask one last question. Out of the 4 structures that make up magic, which one is the most important? Hubert thought this question was much more basic than previous assignments because it was very practical. But Vassal's expression suddenly froze. Professor Hubert felt he had made it hard for him since he himself had only recently found the answer. So the professor had originally planned to give Vassal a different question. But at that moment, Vassal confidently and clearly gave his answer. The most important thing is spirit projection. This time it was Professor Hubert who paused for a few seconds. Why do you think so? Vassal calmly but confidently explained his answer. According to him, magic is something that can materialize the impossible into the real world by using mana. The world classifies this process into 4 levels: synchronization, where we learn the natural laws of phenomena; the mental image, where we visualize what we've learned in our minds, constructing formulas to develop visual images. Finally, there is development, where magic is realized through formulas that can be understood, constructed, and developed through effort and perseverance. But the mental image is not something you can achieve through effort alone. Breaking your own limits to reach free imagination through courage is what determines the level of each person's mental image. For example, Vassal can use magic to create a small flame, but if he imagines that flame as an arrow, it becomes a second-level magic spell called a fire missile. Next, if he imagines something else, that flame can transform into something completely different. In other words, if your imagination has no limits, you can even create things that don't exist in this world, purely fictional illusions. Like a dragon, for example. Like a shadow cast where the sun shines, or hot ice. So everything starts from understanding the world but ends by overturning the world's laws in many ways. That is the essence of magic. You explained it very well without hesitation. His confident demeanor made Professor Hubert even more amazed, just as he thought the student's library was too narrow a world for Vassal. And as a professor, how could he stifle a young talent by limiting him to such a narrow world? The mission to gain access to the first floor of the professor's library was completed. Vassal had just received recognition from Professor Hubert and also obtained 2 low-level magic stones. That was a completely deserved result for his relentless efforts over the past few days. Immediately after being granted permission by the professor, Vassal hurried to the department library. Although he had only accessed the first floor, the vast space and volume of books there were already overwhelming. It was completely different from the student's library. He quickly found practical books for himself like 3-dimensional ballistic magic and advanced herbal magic. Of course, he also kept reviewing the basic theories of magic continuously. After all, that is the foundation of a powerful magician. So absorbed in the knowledge from the book, Vassal did not notice someone approaching from behind. Only when that person's voice rang out did he panic and turn around. "Oh, you're reading quite an interesting book." Vassal jumped, but there was no one behind him. The kid, the owner of that voice, had been behind him, but moved so fast that the naked eye couldn't catch up, and now calmly appeared right in front of him. Then Vassal turned his head and saw a middle-aged woman, but with an extremely elegant and confident demeanor. She was Snow White Daria. Jasal immediately stood up and bowed respectfully. "It is an honor to meet the owner of the fire tower. I am Jasal Raymond." Standing before someone like Daria Vasile, it's hard not to feel breathless, because she is a mage with 8 magic rings. There are very few people in the world who can match her, even though she is over 80 years old, a giant to maintain her youthful appearance. Just this alone shows how abundant Daria's mana flow is. It's just that he doesn't understand why she appeared here. "Oh, so the kid knows me? Don't be so nervous. I'm just a companion traveling alongside you." Saying that, Daria took out a lollipop. This action left Jackson stunned for a moment. Snow White Daria is actually coaxing him like a child. Well, that makes sense. After all, Jackson is currently in a child's body. He obediently accepted the candy and started eating. Daria then began strolling through the department library, and Jackson followed her. But how could a student like him enter the professor's library? After a few steps, Daria asked Professor Hubert, "Let me in." Russell answered honestly. A thrilled smile appeared on Daria's face. "Oh, is that the stubborn guy? Never mind, what the kid is studying is quite interesting. The mana is extremely pure. The mana distribution is also very stable. How rare." Daria's gaze seemed to see right through Jasper's secret. It made you tense, but she quickly reassured you and said she wasn't here to show off or lecture. She told you to try to develop your abilities to the fullest, kid. We'll meet again soon. Daria left an ambiguous remark. After her magic staff tapped the ground a few times, a flash of red light appeared and Daria's figure quickly vanished. "Yes, Master of the Fire Tower." Vassal replied foolishly and didn't calm down for quite a while. "You never thought you'd meet a legendary figure like White Snow Daria here. It was truly an unexpected stroke of luck. You returned to studying your books, until it was late before leaving the department library, and this was seen by the Anton group. Those sycophants thought that to have access to the department library, Jasper must have latched onto some professor. But even so, it didn't change your miserable fate. Jasper was already used to these taunts, so he had no intention to argue. Whether his efforts actually worked or not, he thought that later when the chance came, they would experience it for themselves. And that chance came very soon when the practical magic class was held a few days later. As usual, the student whose name the professor calls first will go down to the arena and choose another student as their opponent. Professors often pick the weakest student first, so that person can pick an opponent of similar level. In the previous life, Russell was always the first to be called. But the result was still a miserable defeat in this class. His classmates also bet that Jackson would be called again, and the novice mages in the class started begging him to choose them as opponents to get a chance to improve their scores. Clearly, even the weakest students in class looked down on him and only saw him as a stepping stone to boost their own scores. But this time, something unbelievable happened. When everyone expected Jasper Raymond's name to be called first, the professor in charge called Anton Frederick instead. Everyone was stunned, and only Anton and that professor understood the situation. After all, he had received quite a few benefits from the Frederick Trade Guild, so arranging for him to pick an opponent first was nothing. Russell didn't seem surprised by this situation. Since Anton arranged to meet him in class, he had already guessed that Anton would use every trick to humiliate him in front of the class. And just as Russell predicted, Anton stood under the arena. His eyes locked onto him and he shouted loudly, "What are you still sitting there for? Come down here, Russell, and fight." Meanwhile, Daria had gone to her private office to meet Hubert. Through their conversation, it was revealed that Hubert was actually Daria's student. After the greeting, she directly brought up Jasper. "So you gave a kid named Jackson a professor's library access card." Hearing his former teacher ask, Hubert became tense. "Yes." "Did he do something wrong?" "No. It's just that I haven't seen such a rare case in a long time." She was right. Hubert sighed deeply. Jasper's mana flow was narrow, causing an abnormal condition. Even on this continent, no one could cure him. Judging by Hubert's expression, it was clear how much he regretted Jasper's talent. But after hearing this, Daria laughed and called him a fool, because Jasper had already healed himself. Through their brief meeting in the library, she discovered this and realized he had completed opening his second magic circle. Back to the practical magic class facing Anton's provocation. Vassal had no reason to stay seated and just watch from the stands anymore. Besides, the system mission had been issued. If he won this practical magic match, you will receive 2 low-level magic stones and unlock a storage space with a maximum capacity of 40 pounds. The space compartment is a type of magic only the wealthiest wizards can use. Using it to store magic stones is incredibly convenient. Thinking of this, Vassal unconsciously smiled, and that smile of his irritated Anton across from him. "You insect, haven't you realized the situation you're in yet? If you want to live, beg me." Vassal felt like he had just told a joke. "Beg me just now, your mana was surging fiercely around you." Jackson made Anton across from him feel that something was off. The professor in charge of the duel called both to their positions. The duel was about to start quickly. At this moment, Anton was ready to strike, because from his feeling just now, Jackson had successfully opened the second magic circle. But for someone always seen as trash like him to open the second magic circle was an insult to Anton. So Anton was extremely impatient. The whistle announcing the start of the duel had just blown. He hastily unleashed the second magic circle spell, Flame Strike. Meanwhile, across from him facing this firestorm, Russell remained calm. He swung his hand to create a magical shield. Importantly, the shield was tilted effectively, wearing down Anton's Flame Strike and protecting Russell from the heat. Jackson's precise action made some professors in the stands unable to help but admire. Others were so surprised they broke into a sweat, wondering if Jackson had been hiding his talent all along. Anton had spent a large amount of mana on this Flame Strike attack, so when he saw Jasper block it, his right arm couldn't help but tremble. His mana wasn't strong enough to maintain the firepower for long. Jasper cautiously used his shield, then timed it perfectly to counterattack with a second magic circle spell, Fire Arrow. Each of his fire arrows powerfully shot through Anton's Flame Strike and headed straight for him. Once the fire arrows were unleashed, the truth that Jackson had opened the second magic circle was revealed to everyone. It was humiliating for Anton, who was so confident he could crush Jackson, to struggle just to block this attack. Yet when he barely resisted the first fire arrow, Jasper already had a second one ready. The speed of this spell casting was astonishing. Even more surprising, Jasper's fire arrow split into 4 arrows at once. The professors in the stands were even more amazed at this sight. "Is that a dual spell? I'm not sure, but I don't think it's a dual spell. Maybe his casting speed is just so fast that it looks like a dual spell." Anton tried to hold his shield firmly. Jackson's continuous fire arrows made him dizzy and overwhelmed. Seeing his opponent repeatedly use fire attacks, he thought of a way to make the shield into a special fire-resistant material. This is also one of the second magic circle spells, but unfortunately this move of Anton's was completely within Jackson's calculation. While the fool thought he would wait for Jasper's mana to run out from the fire arrows before counterattacking to secure victory, Jackson delivered a critical blow. It was a wind arrow, a giant wind magic projectile from the sky that thoroughly destroyed the shield Anton had painstakingly created. Look. He identified the type of shield and its weakness, then switched his magic system to attack so flexible. Is this really the Jasper I know? The professors in the stands were stunned into silence at this moment. After this nearly fatal strike, Anton was drained of energy. His tall body shook like a plow and struggled to stand. And just then, Jackson rushed forward. His right hand clenched into a fist, combining lightning magic to strike hard into Anton's abdomen. His arm trembled, still wanting to cast a spell to counterattack, but Jackson didn't give him the chance. Both hands focused magic, continuously throwing punches straight at his opponent's weak points. What kind of magic is this? Stop the duel immediately. This isn't even magic. The professor who had rigged things for Anton could no longer sit still. But his request to stop the match was overruled by a newcomer, Professor Hubert, who said it's not magic. Take a closer look at what's protecting Jasper. According to Hubert, he then shifted his gaze. And just as Professor Hubert said Jasper was using mana like a magical shield of a knight, Hubert's eyes were full of pride. He had never taught Jasper this, didn't know where he learned it, but clearly today Jasper used it very well in the arena. Anton had absolutely no chance to fight back. The outcome of this match had been clearly decided. After taking Jasper's combo punches, Anton finally couldn't take it anymore, and fainted lying flat on the ground. The whole audience seemed to erupt. The bribed professor's face turned ashen knowing he had colluded with Anton, so Professor Hubert couldn't help but throw a few jabs. What are you spacing out for? Hurry up and announce the winner. Although unhappy under the circumstances, it was impossible to deny. That professor was forced to announce the winner of this match was Very Rodai. Good job, Mon. Now you can go rest. He politely dismissed Jasper, but he wasn't ready to stop yet. According to professional rules, if the winner doesn't want to stop, they can choose the next opponent. Moreover, the mission stated Jasper would earn extra rewards if he achieved consecutive wins in this test. So he didn't want to only beat Anton. Then Vassal asked his henchman to come down and face him, setting a record of 14 consecutive wins. Professor Hubert sat in his office sipping tea and enjoying the satisfaction and joy of this news. He just couldn't understand how Jasper could develop so quickly. That night, after beating Anton and his henchmen badly, Vassal happily returned to the dorm. After showering, he began to check the rewards he received today. The best was still the space bag. The rest were mostly low-level magic stones. They were all automatically transferred into the bag. Among countless notifications, Vassal noticed one about a mysterious reward he had just received. He then reached into the space bag and pulled out a scroll with a drawn map. As soon as Jasper found this map, a new mission in the quest chain was set. He had to go to the location marked on the map and complete the assigned task. Upon reaching the spot, a light would guide him on what to do next. The reward for clearing the stage included 5 medium-level magic stones and a mysterious prize, a medium mana stone that could be consumed after unlocking the 3rd magic circle. Speaking of the 3rd magic circle, Ro felt a bit conflicted. Before traveling back in time, he had tried countless times, but never reached this level. He wasn't sure if he could do it this time either. Plus, although the map clearly marked the location, Vassal was completely clueless about where it actually was. So he decided to look for information in the professor's library the next day. However, Jasper really faced a tough challenge this time, flipping through dozens of books, but finding no place matching the location on the map. He wasted too much time searching for this place with no results. So Jasper decided to focus on unlocking the 3rd magic circle first. Thinking this, Jasper headed back to the lecture hall area. When he looked up, he saw many fearful eyes staring at him. After the previous battle, Jasper was no longer bullied by classmates, but he was still a lonely figure. This made Jasper feel very restless. Just then, Professor Hubert appeared. He wanted to have a private talk with him again. Professor Hubert was a light for Jasper during his dark times at the academy. So every time he got to talk with the professor, he was very happy. Summer break is about to start. Do you have any plans yet? Professor Hubert took him back to the office as usual, brewed a cup of tea for Jasper, and then started to talk. Not yet, Jasper answered honestly. So do you want to do a research project with me? Based on your contributions. Your name will even be listed as an author right after mine. What do you think? Professor Hubert's offer made Jasper hard to hide his surprise. And the main point is in the 2 journals he left on the desk. It seems you have already seen the place you need to find. So, though a bit embarrassed, Jasper had to decline the professor's invitation, saying he had to go to that place in person. Then he returned the other journal to Hubert. Huh. You're planning to vacation in Mandiva. That's truly a stroke of fate. Vatso went into the professor's office to talk and accidentally found the location he had spent so much effort searching for in the library but couldn't find. So right after the summer break started, he got on the carriage heading straight to Mandiva. It's quite a long way. Jasper needed to eat something to settle his stomach, and his food was quite unusual, consisting solely of magic stones. Though the taste was a bit strange, this would fill Jasper's stomach. Great. It's really hot. The coachman outside suddenly felt a burning heat and kept wiping sweat from his forehead. But he had no idea that it was Jasper's mana surging inside the carriage. Jasper planned to reach the 3rd magic circle while still inside this carriage. Meanwhile, Professor Hubert in his office spent half a day staring at that journal pondering. Strange, the boy is also going to Mandiva. It's probably a good thing. She's probably already in Mandiva. When Professor Hubert thought of her, no one else came to mind but the owner of the White Fire Magic Darius. This place is Darius's hometown. She hasn't had a proper vacation in a long time. Between protecting the Empire, giving magic research lectures, and training students, it's truly exhausting. Reflecting on her recent lecture, she spoke about the numbers 3, 6, and 9 as extremely significant to a mage. Specifically, 9 represents the final point of the magical path a person pursues in their lifetime. 6 symbolizes the completion of the 6th magic circle, and the difficulties one must endure to become a grand mage. And 3 marks the turning of the first page when a person begins to walk the magical path alone, thinking of loneliness. Darius remembered Jasper and wondered if the boy was living well now. His diligent appearance in the science library still left a lasting impression on Darius. Until now, she didn't know that Jasper's carriage had already arrived in Mandiva. It's just that the coachman kept calling but didn't get a response. When he opened the carriage door, the scene inside shocked the man. Jasper pushed himself too hard to open the 3rd magic circle and used too much energy to stabilize the chaotic mana, so he became exhausted and fainted. After the coachman brought him into town, the first thing he did upon waking was to eat like a battleship to recover his strength. Thinking back now, it's still scary. But after all, he achieved his main goal of opening the 3rd magic circle. Jasper couldn't believe he could break through his limits just months after returning to the past. But just this alone wasn't enough for him to be complacent. And Jasper promised himself he had to go further. And the immediate task to help him do that was to complete the mission of finding the location marked on that map. Mandiva is just too big. Even though he had seen the marked locations on the map, Jasper still didn't know where to start. Just then he heard someone loudly advertising a volcano tour of Pompeii with the most professional guides. Huge discounts only for today. Without thinking twice, Jasper immediately paid to join this tour group, and he was taken to the foot of Pompeii volcano. According to the guide, originally this was just a normal mountain, but it became a volcano because one day a special creature came to live here. After hearing this, Jasper couldn't help but be amazed. That creature stayed only briefly but changed the natural conditions of the whole area. Why did an image suddenly appear in his mind? Maybe that's it. In this world, there is only one creature capable of that. It is the fire dragon. The knowledge the guide has provided so far seems sufficient. Taking advantage of their distraction, Jasper quickly and quietly jumped down from the cliff. By the time the guide realized someone was missing from the group, Jasper had already reached the waterfall area. He abandoned the reward and the great potential for growth from completing the mission just to come here, because it was related to dragons. But it seems this is a stroke of fate, as the map in Jasper's hand suddenly reacted. A golden light radiated from it, gathering into a round shape like a dragon's eye, then shot off swiftly. Jasper silently wondered if this was the guiding light the system mentioned in the mission. It just shot through the rushing water and disappeared. It seems whatever awaits Jackal lies on the other side of the waterfall. For an ordinary person, this would be a tough challenge, but not for Jackal. He skillfully used wind magic, turning it into a giant arrow shooting straight toward the waterfall. The wind arrow tore through the water, creating a hole. Jackal took advantage of that chance and quickly darted through. Who would have thought that inside the flowing red waterfall was a cave formed from magma? Jackal continued deeper inside and discovered a ruin. No one knew how long it had been there, only that it bore the heavy marks of time. But there wasn't a single monster or beast here. This made Jackal inadvertently lower his guard. After wandering around, he accidentally found a door outside, guarded by 2 stone statues. Vassal guessed this must be the place he was looking for. Without hesitation, he immediately moved toward it. But just then a chilling sensation ran down his spine, causing him to freeze. I'm doomed, Vascol thought. Had he forgotten all his survival instincts from his mercenary days, he'd let his guard down. He should have realized by now that if there were no monsters, beasts, or even any sound around it, meant this territory was suppressed by an extremely powerful creature. Rattlesnake mustered all his courage, turned around, and faced it. At that moment, the fierce, bright eyes of a huge Kodomo dragon spotted Rattlesnake. It attacked wildly, swinging its tail back and forth aggressively. Vassal tried to dodge, but deep down he trembled because a Kodomo dragon was a beast that would normally require at least 2 mercenary squads to handle. The only thing he could do now was run, and if he wanted to survive, he had to buy time effectively. Thinking this vassal used lightning magic to form an arrow, the same old trick shooting straight at the enemy. The arrow hit the Kodomo dragon, causing its whole body to convulse violently. The monster roared in pain and anger, but Vassal knew that damage wasn't enough to take it down. He took advantage of the moment and ran straight toward the stone gate. But when he reached the gate, the two stone statues standing silently suddenly moved. They crossed their weapons, blocking So from approaching the gate. "Prove you are worthy to enter the gate with your mana," a mystical voice echoed. "Damn it," Vassal shouted. What a streak of bad luck. Who would have thought there'd be something like this? Behind the Kodomo dragon, it had escaped the attack, and needless to say, its anger was terrifying now. If the dragon couldn't dodge, death was certain. But he had struggled hard for a chance to start over. How could he just accept death here? Vassal turned to face the ferocious monster charging at him, then cast a fire arrow using all his mana. He bet everything on this move to take down the beast. Who would have guessed that when Jackal used fire arrow, the red stone embedded in the rock wall suddenly reacted? The Kodomo dragon opened its eyes wide, then suddenly stopped as well. It stopped right in front of Jackal, then carefully knelt down and bowed before him. Vassal was completely confused, not understanding what was happening, while behind him, the two stone statues had returned to their original state. The seal on the gate had been lifted. The voice said Jackal had proven himself worthy to pass through this gate. The red stone kept glowing its light so intense it blinded Jackal. He temporarily lost his sight, and only after a long moment could he see again. The first thing that hit Jackal's eyes was his own face. More precisely, he was seeing his reflection through a thick layer of ice. Vassal was twice as confused when he realized he was in a cold room. The floor was covered with thick ice and snow, and several stone statues guarded the area. Could the light just now have been teleportation magic? He had clearly just been inside a cave. While the dragon was still confused, a huge object emitting the same mysterious red glow appeared in the center of the room. At the same time, a new quest window appeared. It was Chapter 2's quest, requiring him to defeat all the ice golems in the area and overcome the fire challenge. The reward for this challenge was 5 medium-level mana stones and a mysterious prize. "Ice golems," Russell muttered. Then he heard a rumbling sound. The stone statues surrounding him suddenly opened their eyes from their stone slumber, simultaneously transforming into ice and advancing toward him. "Damn, does this quest really require me to take down all these guys? This seems a bit too harsh." Vassal used a fire missile to take down the first golem. With his extensive combat experience, he knew that to defeat a golem, he had to destroy its core inside. Yet the fire missile that seemed to have hit the golem only cracked its chest. The ice it was made of was incredibly hard beyond Vassal's imagination, as fire had little effect. He then tried using wind magic, but unfortunately Vassal couldn't cast wind arrows. Even lightning magic was completely nullified. It seemed this challenge could only be overcome with fire magic. No wonder the quest mentioned the fire challenge. That meant Jackal couldn't use any magic other than fire attributes right now. The situation quickly worsened when he was knocked down by a golem. Dozens of aggressive golems pushed Jackal against the wall. If he stayed idle, they would surely crush his right arm. Jackal moved slightly and used fire missile again to attack the golems in front. It was truly terrifying. Casting spells at a dizzying speed, Russell continuously launched fire missiles straight at the golem horde. Of course, continuous attacks were more effective than single strikes. But even so, Vassal was overwhelmed by the monsters because he was tired, having only defeated 2 so far. If he kept following this group, he would run out of mana before defeating them all. Vassal risked counterattacking while also trying to find another way to break the solid ice armor of the golems. Immediately, he needed to focus all his power on one point. In the end, the answer was density. Vassal took the opportunity to run away and cast magic. Once he reached the desired distance, he created a fire missile and enlarged it. Not stopping there, Jasper added a formula simulating fire lightning and finally merged all these elements together. The power began to condense, but right then a golem charged at him and raised its ice axe. Jasper's heart trembled. "Come on, merge it now," he shouted. A deafening explosion and a blinding flash of light appeared. The golem before Jasper was torn apart, and in Jasper's hand was now a fiery scythe. Though exhausted, it seemed he had found a breakthrough. Evidence was the new system notification reminding him that his understanding of fire element had surpassed his own limits. Jasper could feel it too. This power was at least close to the level of the 5th magic circle, and maintaining this fiery scythe has already drained a large amount of your energy. Therefore, Jasper has no reason to hesitate. He clenched the new weapon tightly in his hand and charged at the golem horde to fight for his life. The golems were big but slow, while Jasper was small but agile. Plus, with his past life battlefield experience, he darted past several golems as fast as an arrow. In an instant, he had taken down two, then another one. At this point, only one ice golem opponent remained, but Jasper faced great difficulty defeating this last obstacle. Because right after Jasper destroyed another golem, the last one ambushed him from behind, pushing him against the wall. Jasper used the fiery scythe to block that blow. Otherwise, he would have died. But the price for surviving that moment was his mana rapidly depleting. The scythe in his hand was also about to lose its shape. According to Jasper's calculations, he could only launch one final strike. Facing the enraged golem charging at him, he decided to retreat to gain momentum, then threw his weapon like a spear. Along with the monster's roaring charge, his scythe managed to carve a large hole in the ice golem's body before completely disappearing. Only after witnessing that scene did Jasper's burden lift, and that was when he collapsed amid the ruins from exhaustion. For completing the mission on time, Jasper received a reward of 5 magic stones and a mysterious prize, the horn of the Forgotten King with fire attributes. His life was now secured. The giant horn hanging suspended in the air began to shake violently. Under the pressure, the chains started to snap and fall to the ground. A red flame flared up, blazing bright red. System notification of reward, the horn of the Forgotten King fire essence. A dazzling light appeared, blurring everything around. The motionless object on the ground was gradually enveloped in light, entering the subconscious of the Forgotten King to receive the reward. He, with a bloodied face, slowly opened his eyes. Currently, Jack was suspended by golden chains in an endless space. In front of him flickered a screen. He thought this place was a series of notifications flashing, "You have received the reward, the horn of the Forgotten King fire essence. Entering the subconscious of the Forgotten King to receive the reward." Vasco wondered, "Isn't that the horn of the Fire Dragon King?" He irritably questioned, "But is this really a reward?"
"I feel like I'm being tortured."
A dark, eerie voice echoed inside his head, intimidating anyone who could endure it. The trial of fire and entering the subconscious of a divine being. He painfully and fearfully gasped, "Are these the lingering thoughts? I feel like my head is about to split open." The giant burning horn appeared, carrying that low voice. It looked at him and said, "I grant you a fragment of the king." Vassal was shocked by that statement and could only blink as the sharp horn lunged toward him. He cried out in horror, "What?" Before Vassal could react, it decisively pierced through his body. Vassal screamed in pain, rolling his eyes. The pointed tip of the horn was embedded inside him. Immediately after, Rattlesnake's body exploded with a terrifying surge of energy. The horn's voice sounded again, "Use this power!" He groaned in pain before the powerful energy surging within him. The massive silhouette of a dragon appeared behind Rattlesnake. His whole body now radiated dazzling light and immense power. Scene cuts to a peaceful beach filled with sunlight and the sound of crashing waves. A weak figure lay on the sandy shore. Russell struggled to open his eyes, groaning quietly in pain. He stood up dazed, wondering, where am I? Looking at the magnificent city before him, Russell finally realized and whispered in amazement, "Manhwa." He rubbed his head confused and asked, "What happened there?" The system displayed a notification again. "You have absorbed the horn of the Forgotten King and reached the mana capacity limit. Exceeding the limit you can absorb is a potential. Intermediate understanding of fire attributes has reached its limit and will become advanced understanding of fire attributes." After reading the notification, Russell clenched his hands tightly and began to use his power. Immediately, a massive surge of power erupted outwards. He was astonished and thought, "Is this my mana? I can almost see how close I am to the level 4 magic circle." Vassal was so happy he nearly cried. He placed his hand on his chest, choked up, and said, "Compared to what I went through there, this reward is top-notch." A familiar voice caught his attention. "Nice to meet you here, Vassal Raymond Dariath." Smiling at Jack, then surprised, he exclaimed, "Lady Snow Dariath." The two stood talking in front of a drink stall. Dariath spoke. "I sensed a sudden mana explosion, so I came here to check." She handed him a glass of juice and continued, "And found you here, Vassal." With a wrinkled face, he smiled brightly and replied, "Thank you, ma'am. I didn't expect to meet you here, Tower Mistress." Dariath's eyes lit up silently, assessing the boy who had almost reached level 4 magic circle in such a short time. She glanced at him and couldn't help but marvel. His mana is even purer. The boy is basically a genius. Russell put his glass down and asked, "So what brought you to Mandiva Tower, mistress?" Dariath looked at this beautiful scenery and softly replied, "Not many know, but this is my homeland." He suddenly asked, "Your homeland?" She calmly answered, "Yes, that's why every summer I come back here." "But honestly, what brings you here, kid?" He looked at her, thinking it was too soon to tell her the truth, and awkwardly scratched his head, hesitating. "Well, after some thought, I came here just to admire the world more." Dariath laughed and said, "Oh, I see." In her heart, she silently considered whether to test this kid's abilities. Suddenly, she made a proposal. "So would you mind helping me out a bit?" Dariath snapped her fingers and used her power. Immediately, flames burst out surrounding Jasper's body. A cloak appeared draped over him. Jasper looked at the emblem on the cloak in amazement, thinking it was the symbol of the fire tower. Dariath calmly answered the question he hadn't voiced. "Don't worry, it's something you can do." The system popped up again with a reminder announcing Dariath Snow's test mission. Help her fight off the slave traders with pirates at Mandiva Port and pass her test. The reward is a mid-level mana stone. Dasso was shocked and thought, pirates, remembering the ongoing prison situation. Dariath explained, "I guess you've noticed, but Endymion strictly forbids slavery. The current situation is troubling her, which is why we don't allow slave ships to dock at our port." At the docks under the dark night, people were still carrying loads. Dariath spoke in a low voice. "But unfortunately, at the coastal cliff, an unknown fleet is approaching." She seriously added, "Some are trying to anchor near Mandiva." The two sat on a small boat rowing out to sea. Dariath steered the boat from the front, calmly saying, "Of course I could handle this on my own." She continued seriously, "But the goal of this plan is to rescue the victims and seize the ship. It requires a detailed plan." Vassal behind began stating his purpose for being here. "So we need to bait an attack." Dariath praised, "You catch on quickly." He started to ponder. If the tower mistress asked for help, hundreds of mages would rush over even barefoot. By then, their small boat had approached the large slave ship. Russell observed Dariath's use of power, silently thinking, considering how specially she asked for my help. Suddenly, fog rolled in, obscuring their night vision. At that moment, Russell silently confirmed his suspicion. This definitely is a test. The small boat closed in on the target. Dariath called to Russell. She turned and warned, "What happens from now on might be a bit much for you." He looked puzzled, but listened to Dariath's advice. "But the path of a guardian won't always be smooth and glorious." She calmly continued, "This is just another fate for our mage." Dariath stepped onto the edge of the boat. She used her strength to jump up, turned around, and said, "Now I will draw their attention, while you go rescue the people." Immediately after Dariath vanished from his sight, Vassal silently thought about her earlier words. The path of a guardian. Dariath hovered in the air, bowing her head to observe the overall situation in the mist. After grasping the situation, she smiled and said, "All right, the test should only be around here." Dariath's eyes glowed with a layer of light. Immediately, a huge surge of power erupted fiercely, covering the entire sky. She shouted orders, "Go, kid!" The shouting echoed across the night sky. "She's attacking!" The people on the ship hurriedly prepared crossbows aimed at the giant energy in the air. "Hurry up!" The pirates gripped their weapons tensely, looking up at the sky. The captain raised his sword high and ordered to fire. A rain of arrows flew up from the ground directly toward Dariath. She looked at the clowns, making a show, and only responded with a disdainful smile. A terrified pirate exclaimed, "Damn, they can't reach her!" Dariath angrily summoned a deep flame and said, "You bastards dare hide in my territory!" She gently blew the flame in her hand, sending it flying. Small flames began to fall onto the pirate's ship. They looked confused, watching the situation unfold. Dariath said again, "Let's see if your abilities match your courage." Seeing the fire burning on the ship's surface, they panicked and shouted, "What?" One tried to stomp out the fire, but angrily yelled, "What did you do?" Before he could put his foot down, the flame, as if with a mind, flared up and caught the pirate's foot. He was gradually engulfed by the flames, screaming in pain. Why is it burning like this? The flames gathered together and began to form a fixed shape. It glanced around, observing the pirates on the ship. They flickered like torches, lighting up the entire ship. A hand reached up from the sea, gripping the side of the ship. Vatsal skillfully jumped onto the ship's bow. Immediately after, a shout rang out, attracting his attention. Move quickly. Lazaro looked up at the chaotic scene before him, silently amazed. It was the sight of the Hellfire Dwarf confronting a pirate. He thought Darius's magic had covered this entire area. The pirate angrily swung an axe at the cursed one. The Hellfire Dwarf quickly returned to his original form. Lazaro silently marveled that he could see it exist in human form. Its scythe decisively struck the pirate's leg. Along with the pirate's terrible screams, he was burned alive in an instant. Vasco looked horrified by what just happened and couldn't help but panic. Huh, what just happened? In the blink of an eye. The other pirates exclaimed fearfully, it transformed into that form. He regained composure and turned to look at the ship's door, thinking, well, now is not the time to panic. Vassal opened the hatch, cautiously observing around, stepping inside, carefully thinking, we have to save those controlled by Darius first. The dark cellar with the creaking iron frames sent chills down the spine. The pirate guard wrinkled his brow, hearing the noisy sounds on the ship's surface, and wondered, what's going on out there? The captives joyfully exclaimed, the Navy is here, we're being rescued. The pirate, banging his sword hard against the bars, made a jarring noise. Like a demon, he threatened the trembling captives with a fierce voice. No matter what happens, you won't escape from here. The pirate spoke aggressively, not noticing what was behind him. Suddenly, a hand appeared, gripping tightly at the back of his neck. Rattail said in a deep voice, drag him immediately. A bolt of lightning surged, paralyzing the pirate's body. He was scorched by Rattail's electric pull smoke rising from his burning body. Vassal threw him to the ground and exhaled. Sure enough, no one is upstairs. A captive hurriedly stood up, clutching the bars, asking him, did you come to save us? He was drawn by the sound and glanced at Vassal, who nodded affirmatively and smiled reassuringly. But we have to wait until the pirates leave first. It will be safer here now. The person immediately knelt down and bowed deeply, exclaiming, O Divine One, you have heard my prayers. He glanced around silently, wondering how many others were locked up in this tiny place. Rattail's eyes slid in astonishment. He looked at the child curled up in a corner and involuntarily said, they even sell children like this as slaves. Vassal angrily gritted his teeth and cursed those bastards. Suddenly, a group of pirates burst in through the door, shouting, someone there! They stood frozen when they saw you looking at the burnt, motionless, chubby guard lying on the ground. The pirates exclaimed in shock, what him? An angry leader swung his sword and shouted, capture that bastard! They charged fiercely, each rushing quickly toward Vassal. You frowned in annoyance, raised your hand, and used magic seriously to warn them, I'm the one catching you. Chains covered in a flurry of lightning bolts swiftly moved through the pirates with ease. They were quickly knocked down by the electric shock. Vassal calmly stepped forward, one of them still barely able to speak. Are you a mage? He stubbornly kept his arrogant attitude and said, if the commander comes... Before the pirate finished, Jackson coldly signaled, pull. He continued deeper into the room. Vassal stood before a dim, suspicious room and said, this prison cell. Then a voice called out, are you the mage of the fire tower? Vassal used magic to summon a ball of lightning light. Looking closely at those behind bars, he was amazed, thinking they were elves. An elf suddenly stood up and asked Zuko again, so you are the mage of the fire tower, right? He remembered the flower on the cloak, finally realizing, oh, they saw this symbol. Vassal calmly replied, no, I am not a member of the fire tower. A cold voice cut him off. Anyone will do. Dam coldly ordered, open this door. Vassal forced a smile inside and thought, I really want to open the door for them. The tone of that guy sounds really annoying. Looking at the arrogant faces of the group, he thought gloomily, in this situation, they're still like this. It makes me want to leave immediately. Suddenly, a solemn voice rang out, stop right there. Ilo, sitting inside, observed and spoke out loud as a reminder, be careful how you behave. Looking at her sitting upright there, he asked suspiciously, Ilo? The elves beside her helped her stand up. Ilo calmly explained, he's not an ordinary person. She stepped forward to face him. Before Jasper's bewildered eyes, she continued, "He possesses a pure mana amount, like a lightning bolt at dawn." Elo smiled gently and affirmed, "I can sense the spiritual scent from him." The group looked at Elo and asked curiously, "Not an ordinary person. You mean—" She pondered and replied, "I can smell the spiritual scent within his body." Vassal was confused, thinking, spiritual scent. Another elf also exclaimed in astonishment, "No way! Could the spiritual scent really come from a human?" He unconsciously raised his arm to his nose and sniffed, wondering, "Do I smell like anything?" A call snapped Jackson out of his thoughts. The fire tower mage stepped forward with a forced expression, silently looking at him. Then he suddenly bowed and pleaded, "Jackson, please save us from here." Next, all the elves inside bowed simultaneously and shouted, "We beg you!" Vasco was surprised at this unbelievable scene and exclaimed, "Elves are known for arrogance, but changed just because of one word from her." He looked at Elo's calm demeanor as she bowed and thought, could she be a high-level elf? Or even more than that, Vasco used magic to melt the lock. At this moment, Elo spoke for protection, calmly asking him, "Have you defeated all the pirates and their leader?" Vasco looked confused and answered, "Leader." At that moment, a figure appeared looking at the pirates Vasco had just defeated. Ilo seriously said, "They are still strong." The captain glanced around the ship's hold, searching for targets, affirming, "Stronger than skilled magic warriors." The next prison cell door was opening, the floor littered with pirates. The captain gave a twisted smile, pleased, on the ship's deck at this moment. John Click was leisurely watching the chaotic scene of fire people fighting in front of him. The sounds of shouting curses continuously ringing out, damn it. He leaned on the ship's wheel and exclaimed, "Fire battle interesting?" John Click reached behind and pulled out his enormous sword, then jumped up and vanished from his original spot. John Click appeared like a death god, striking down both fire-hell dwarves with one slash. The two dwarves quickly vanished. He shouted angrily, "Are you all still struggling with attacks like this?" The pirates cheered joyfully when they saw who had arrived. "It's the leader." Under the ship, excited cheers echoed to Darius, hovering in the air. "The leader is here. You're done for. We'll tear you to pieces." She looked down at the monkeys below with a smirk and said, "Interesting." Immediately, Darius dived down to join them, her feet firmly landing on the railing by the helm. John Click and the pirates immediately turned to look at Darius like a queen from above, holding her staff and looking down. John Click sneered angrily and asked, "Are you closing the distance between us?" She didn't answer directly, but calmly replied, "It seems you are the leader." He confidently announced, "That's right, I'm the captain of this ship, John Click." Darius observed him carefully and commented, "The way you use aura." John Click fell silent, listening to her question. "You must have been a knight before. What are you doing here?" He started laughing bitterly, covering his face and growling in frustration. "Does being a knight pay the bills or cover taxes?" John Click raised his head proudly and said, "The Click brothers made a fortune from slave trading." Darius frowned and asked, "Brothers?" He quietly started using his power, taking advantage of her distraction to quickly charge forward, delivering a powerful slash aimed directly at Darius. At the same time, down by the prison cell, the back wall suddenly cracked, due to an unexpected impact. An urgent warning sound alerted him to the abnormal situation. Too dangerous. 1 second later, the wooden wall exploded, creating thick dust clouds. Vassal nimbly dodged the attack, but began coughing heavily because of the dust. He quickly raised a protective shield around his body, exclaiming in alarm, "What is that noise?" Looking at the debris at his feet, he thought silently, "So painful, Keeper." Watching Jasper's movements, he said excitedly, "You blocked them." He released energy, drawing his sword, and stepped closer to Vassal, guessing that he must be a mage as well. Jasper observed the power source on him quietly and assessed aura from the sword. "Is he a knight?" The system board popped up a notification. "A tough battle, the first fight against a swordsman. Very difficult situation, but defeat your opponent. Reward for passing intermediate mana stones." Elo staff behind reminded Vassal's guard, "Be careful." She looked at the captain, who was approaching with an overwhelming aura, and explained, "He is the deputy leader on this ship." He exhaled disdainfully. Even if you're a mage, you're just a snot-nosed kid. Then the captain kicked a pirate lying motionless on the floor, sneering. You didn't kill them, just kicked them out. He said casually something unexpected. If you've won, you should finish them off. The captain laughed nastily, pointing his sword at Jackson. I'll show you! Jackson didn't want to lose and unleashed his power lightning bolts appearing around him. In his mind, he calculated, fire demon magic has huge area damage, so if that's the case... Jackson jumped aside and decisively launched lightning toward him. The captain dragged his sword out of the floor and said, using lightning magic against a swordsman, he swung the sword down onto the floor, making wooden planks fly up to directly meet the incoming lightning. The wooden boards, being insulating perfectly, blocked the attack. The captain mocked him, you're really crazy. Moments later, he stomped on the ground and dashed toward him like lightning. Hesitantly said, but vassal. He strained to use lightning magic, intending to hold the captain back. He gritted his teeth and wondered, why doesn't my attack affect him? The swordsman faced a barrage of wild lightning bolts without fear and proudly said, you can't do anything to me. He easily blocked Vassal's magic with his sword. This special sword could even resist lightning. Vassal was astonished and exclaimed, he's immune to lightning magic. Keter, with glowing red eyes like a grim reaper, closed in and slashed at him. The clash between sword blade and protective shield created a sharp grating sound. His sword seemed to be absorbing and eroding Vassal's shield. He stared in horror, unable to believe it, thinking, my shield. Rattle trembled while defending the shield, gradually cracking, and within seconds it was completely destroyed. The slash aimed straight at him. To Rattle's shock, a powerful slash targeted Darius. John Click was stunned when what he attacked turned out to be an illusion created by her. He thought, fire. John Click turned his head, clicking his tongue irritably toward Daria, sarcastically saying, a mage, huh? You're good at running away. She still maintained a calm expression and said, let me ask you something. Are your brothers knights too? John Click proudly raised his sword and replied, that's right, but of course not as good as me. He disdainfully slashed a sword into the air. Another fire dwarf! Darius responded in a deep voice. No, this time will be a little different. John Click was stunned by this cryptic answer. Immediately, two hellfire dwarves with strange appearances appeared. He looked at the two humanoid flames before him and silently assessed two of them. John Click frantically attacked them, then suddenly noticed something unusual and thought, the more I slash, the more they multiply. After a short time, he was surrounded by a horde of hellfire dwarves. Darius stood above, looking down with satisfaction and a sinister smile. The hellfire dwarves quickly surged forward to attack, leaving him no time to react. John Click began to panic. Turning his head to look at her, he thought in horror, impossible. Only then did he realize the level of the person in front of him. John Click exclaimed in shock, why is the Mars Sorcerer Tower appearing here? Scene shifts down to the ship's hold debris from the shield and blood splattering. Captain suddenly looked at the space in front of him, then turned to see Jack Rowe had moved beside him without him noticing. This surprised Captain eyes wide. He saw Jack still standing firm after the deadly attack and thought in awe, did he dodge that? Recalling the moment when Captain broke through his protective shield, he frowned suspiciously. He should have been cut in half. Observing the energy around Zetsu's body carefully, he began to speculate. Is he surrounding himself with defensive magic to strengthen his body? Caton grinned wickedly and excitedly thought, whatever it is, it's useless. He's just a rat trapped in a cage. Elo anxiously watched the battle and couldn't help but call for guards. Zetsu, panting and clutching his chest tensely, thought, your knight. He recalled memories that seemed buried deep, the face of Spanzoom haunting him. In a past life, he had met him. Vassal fearfully recalled that bloody scene. He had slaughtered an innocent group of mercenaries just for bumping into him. Just as Vassal was about to fall, a savior appeared. Alan stood in front, protecting Jackson. Behind the two facing each other, both wielded immense power. He thought back the only person who could stop him was a mage. The two clashed in battle almost evenly matched. Russell thought of Alan during the fight, silently calculating that his method was returning to reality. At this moment, he summoned a new protective shield, facing the Keeper's furious assault. Russell quickly calculated as one of the Keeper's powerful sword strikes smashed down on his defense. Immediately, the shield shattered, producing a deafening sound. Unexpectedly, beneath that layer of defense was another shield. That was Jackson's calculated move, deploying a second shield. Captain was surprised, thinking it blocked it. Just as he let his guard down, Jackson quickly condensed energy into his palm, preparing to counterattack. He struck powerfully into Captain's stomach, catching him off guard. Captain was thrown back by the blow, creating a cloud of smoke. Captain slammed hard into the wall, groaning in pain. Vasco was also seriously injured. He struggled holding on to the iron bars to stay standing. He assessed his trembling body, thinking, "Have I lost too much blood already?" Then he reached out, broke the prison lock, and freed the imprisoned elves, saying, "Everyone get out." Elo bowed gratefully and thanked him. Gardum also thanked him and offered, "If you feel okay, follow me." Suddenly, a dark voice echoed, "You brat!" Captain suddenly stood up after taking Jackson's direct attack, leaving everyone there astonished. He was so angry his eyes were bloodshot veins bulging on his head. "You should have cut off my head!" Russell was shocked to see Captain still standing, wondering silently, "I did it right." He quickly raised his hand to shield Elo behind him and ordered, "Please take the captives upstairs." Dang objected angrily. "You want us to release the humans?" Another elf chimed in, "You want to?" But Elo interrupted the descent, agreeing with Hasso. "Fine." Guardcatter stood up, cracked his neck, and sneered mockingly. "Still have time to rescue slaves." Like lightning, he leapt forward, disappearing from his original spot, filled with murderous intent, like a mad demon fiercely attacking Jackson's defenses. Excitedly, he reminded him, "Take care of yourself first." Each sword strike easily shattered a layer of shield. As soon as the first layer was broken, Captain guessed his move, giving Jasper no chance to resist continuing the attack. He thought, "I won't give him any chance to counterattack." He smiled smugly at the struggle Jasper showed in battle. Under such overwhelming power, Vassal could only frantically use shield magic again and again. Watching the elves desperately trying to escape, he told himself, "I have to hold on." The elf group quickly retrieved the key from the prison guard's corpse. They quickly rescued those enslaved by the pirates. Vassal silently resolved, "Just a little more time to get everyone out of here." Soon after, an announcement sounded, signaling the danger was over. All guards are safe. Keeper was still very confident in his abilities. He taunted him mockingly. "You think this will work?" A gentle voice rang out, accompanied by blazing red flames spreading throughout the cell. "Of course it will." He was stunned by this unexpected turn and couldn't react or dodge in time. Vasco shifted his stance, smiling calmly as he declared, "And now I will destroy you." The flames grew larger, spreading through the ship's cabin. Captain began to tense up, thinking, "What is this?" Jasper's eyes changed. They became sharp like a hunting leopard's. He sensed danger and immediately stepped back, calculating silently. The atmosphere around him changed, and Captain's expression showed an indescribable excitement. He thought, finally, he's ready to make his move. Captain channeled the energy inside his body and then aimed straight at Jackson. Recklessly charging forward, he confidently asserted, "Then I'll stab both you and your shield." Suddenly, he began using magic, startling Captain. Jackson summoned a blazing red spear, fiercely pointing its tip at him, fearless and ready to face him. Fire Flame Spear. Keeper's face darkened as he fiercely swung his sword forward, judging Fire Spear. It looked wild and fierce, not to be underestimated. Right in front of him, he immediately doubted, "No, this is completely different." This spear clashed twice, producing a harsh sound and dazzling light. Captain still quietly wondered. It must be at least several levels stronger than the previous magic he cast. Meanwhile, on the ship's deck, the unfavorable situation was turning against John Click. He cursed angrily. "Damn it!" John Click looked at the growing horde of fire-held dwarves surrounding him, urgently calculating his strategy. "The more I kill, the more they come, but I can't kill them all." He frowned and stepped back silently, scolding, "What the hell is my idiot brother doing?" Watching Darius calmly standing there, John Click grew even more frustrated, thinking if he were here, he would have already caught that witch. The dwarves didn't give him a moment to rest and rushed to attack again. John Click blocked them with a single slash, telling himself to hold out just a little longer. Suddenly, the wooden plank beneath him began to crack, revealing flickering light. The ship rocked violently, making John Click even more anxious and alarmed. Seeing the growing light beneath his feet, he grew increasingly suspicious of this tragic situation. A gigantic pillar of light appeared, piercing through the ship's sail and shooting straight into the sky, momentarily dispelling the night and shaking the sea surface. John Click stood at the center of that immense energy, immediately crying out in pain, spitting blood. He couldn't believe he was defeated, only able to helplessly scream in rage and disbelief. Darius was also shocked by the sudden scene, covering his mouth and exclaiming, "What is happening?" She heard the noise, turned around, and seeing Elo and the elves rescuing prisoners, thought I was too careless. Then she looked at Jackson, lying motionless in the ship's cabin, and blamed herself. Leave it to Jackson to handle everything. Surrounded by flickering flames, he lay there silent and still. The system displayed a message: "You have completed the mission and received a reward. You received a mid-level mana stone." Below the ship, the pirates aggressively climbed aboard small boats, continuously shouting that their leader was down and surrounding them. The defense ship gathered, hearing the chaos. Darius just laughed mockingly and gently raised his staff. She used magic to disperse the Helldwarf group, saying I should think carefully about this matter. Darius decisively slammed his staff onto the deck, making a loud noise, a sound like a signal horn that made the dry dwarves hesitate before jumping into the sea. Rushing to attack the pirates' small boats, the large ship began to move, leaving behind the dazzling light of the just-finished battle. Healing power was being used by Elo on himself very slowly. He hugged his heavily injured body, struggling to sit up, and asked, "What happened?" She gently reminded him, "Don't move, the warm magic from the benefactor is still radiating." Ilo spoke up. "My mana hasn't recovered yet, so healing will take a little longer." Seeing Jackson awake and standing aside, Darius couldn't help but praise, "Well done, you defeated 2 knights by yourself." He was still confused and said, Jackson questioned, "I thought I only fought 1. She calmly explained, actually it was 2. The 2 pirate leaders were tied to the mast unconscious. Silent Elo gratefully said, "I owe you." She seriously confessed before Jasper's confusion. "It's a big debt. Although I can't repay you right now," Elo firmly declared, "I, Elo, daughter of the White Leaf tribe, bearing the name of my ancestors, swear to repay you one day." He humbly replied, "I am Jasper Romeo. I am only fulfilling my duty as a bodyguard." Miss Elo was at her peak when Daria suddenly interrupted, "Don't forget, we are also from the Fire Magic Tower." A loud call rang out. Lord Dam and his companions appeared, seriously reporting, "We have finished checking the prisoner's conditions." She responded with satisfaction. "Very good." Darius turned to Elo with praise. "Your subordinates are very capable." Vassal suddenly thought, "They have behaved completely differently than before." He turned to her and asked foolishly, "Miss Elo, what did you mean by inside the ship?" Elo calmly answered, "Are you asking about Darius?" Startled, he turned his head upon hearing her question. "When I mentioned the souls on the vast sea, the ship was still moving forward toward the place where the sun begins to rise," Russell responded. "That's right." Ilo probed further. "Are you part Dragon Clan by blood?" Russell wondered aloud. Dragon Clan. He recalled the image of a large dragon hiding in the forest. Thoughtfully replied, "Yes, actually. I carry the blood of the Azure Dragon, though just like a drop in the lake." She gently lifted his hand and slowly smelled the faint scent, saying, "Even a little dragon blood is enough to attract spirits." Elo calmly explained the reason before Zasu's confusion. "I can smell a strong spiritual scent from you. That's why I wondered if you might also be mixed dragon blood like me." Witnessing the entire conversation, Darius silently speculated that mixed dragon blood might be the reason Zasu could develop so quickly. She looked toward the distant horizon, thinking he could become a person of the sunlight. A stern face clearly appeared. Darius calculated to cause chaos in the Endymion kingdom, or rather the whole continent. When it was fully daylight, the ship arrived at the port. The elf group safely disembarked. Soldiers assisted the captured people off the ship. A familiar call caught Miss Elo's attention. "Elo." Darius smiled warmly and asked, "I'm sure you'll stay in hiding until you fully recover your mana, right?" She nodded affirmatively. Looking at the magnificent castle in the bustling city center, she offered, "My mansion isn't far. If you don't mind, Miss, you can stay there. I think Miss can help train Jackson." He looked confused, pointing to himself, asking, "Train?" Elo smiled brightly and agreed, "If I can repay you that way, I'd be very willing." Darius put his arm around his shoulder and patted him, asking, "So you don't mind, do you?" He happily replied, "Of course not. I'd really like that." Troubled inside, he was intrigued by the special training from the Fire Magic Tower's lord. She motioned to the elf group. "Then please follow me this way." The luggage will be brought here soon. Thank you, ma'am. Worrying Vassal walked ahead, wondering if the Tower Lord was okay. The new semester is about to start. Darius winked to reassure, don't worry about that, leave it to who to handle. You're speechless, silently sympathizing with the professor. On the mountain trail, the sea waves below gently lapped. The horse-drawn carriages moved in a line. The drivers controlled the horses moderately, the carriages leisurely crossing forests and mountains. Throughout the journey, the clatter of the wheels echoed in the mountain forest. Finally, the carriages stopped in front of a mansion as big as a castle. Darius declared they had arrived. He slid down from the carriage, looking up and exclaiming, "It's so huge." Darius pushed open the mansion gate, smiled at everyone behind him, and said, "Feel free to go in. Don't be shy of her." Leading the way, he crossed through a garden blooming with vibrant flowers. Ilo was drawn to the flowers and expressed her gratitude. Truly a beautiful place. Thank you for your kindness, Tower Master. While walking, Vassal's eyes suddenly noticed something. Looking at the fountain not far away, he was startled. Wait, this place triggered some memories. Vassal was certain he had been here before with his parents. He then spoke up, calling Darius Tower Master, "I have something to ask." She politely turned around. "What is it?" Vassal stepped forward softly, asking, "This mansion wasn't originally yours, right?" Darius teased, "Sounded like I stole it." He shyly chuckled, "Haha, sorry." But she honestly shared, "You're right. The previous owner was some merchant guild. I only bought it a few years ago." Vassal looked at the fountain memories, and familiar feelings returned. Just as he thought this place was one of his family's properties. Darius asked if he had any other questions. Vassal smiled no. He glanced around the huge mansion. After the family fell, he heard it was sold cheaply. About to enter inside, Vassal couldn't help but exclaim, "Never thought I'd come back here one day." A week later, a swift figure entered the room. A gentle voice sounded, "I'm here, Ilo." The elf girl of the White Wax Tree tribe appeared respectfully, saying, "I heard you call me." The hostess sipped tea indifferently. Her eyes brightened with relief. It seemed most of her mana had recovered. In Darius's eyes, a pale green aura surrounded Ilo's body. She smiled, "All thanks to you, Tower Master." Darius set down the teacup and got straight to the point. "So about what we talked about earlier, can you help train Jasper?" Ilo used her magic water, danced around her. "You mean to train his soul, right?" Darius nodded, "Exactly." Ilo looked around and wondered, "But where is Jasper?" She smiled mysteriously. "I told him to do something else." The river flowed through the mountain gorge. A mournful howl echoed. A figure fell freely into the water splash. Water sprayed into the air. Shortly after, he surfaced and took a deep breath. He swam ashore, ran his hair back, frustrated, and sighed, failed again. Vassal recalled the earlier conversation with Darius. She asked what he learned from the fight against those pirate knights. "I mean, what do you think you needed at that moment since they closed in on you? Luckily, you had a shield." He hesitated about that, then looked at the cliff across. He answered, "Distance." Darius praised, "Right in combat, distance is very important for a mage." She turned back with a confident smile and instructed Watch, carefully standing on the steep cliff edge. Daria stepped forward without hesitation. Flames flickered beneath his feet in midair. She said, "Think about narrowing the space." Her body vanished, leaving only a faint flame in place. With a swoosh, Darius landed on the opposite cliff, looking stunned. That was teleportation magic time-space blink. She turned to him. "From now on, practice crossing this cliff with blink." Vassal listened attentively. "Later, it will become a powerful tool for you." At the same time, the system appeared notifying the teleportation magic training quest reward intermediate mana stone. Back to the present. Vassal tiredly dragged his soaking body ashore. He climbed the cliff, determined not to give up on blink. Whether the magic circle was big or small didn't matter. Sitting on the cliff, Vassal tried to analyze. You can only learn this magic when you fully understand its rules. Standing on the cliff, looking down, your eyes show a hint of worry. Vassal focused and took a step into the void. As expected, a scream from the freefall game rang out immediately after. Time passed, dusk fell, and you, exhausted and drenched, climbed up the cliff. Is this magic training or physical exercise? Vassal closed his eyes, searching for the sensation of the magic flow, concentrating it. Thinking about narrowing the distance this time, a magical fire vortex appeared under his feet, like when Darius demonstrated. Vassal lifted his other foot off the rock fire wrapped around both legs. It seemed he was about to succeed. Just as he thought he could blink over to the other side of the cliff, right now, a voice called out behind him. "Rattlesnake." Then he stumbled and fell into the river. Darius was the culprit. She gave an apologetic smile, watching Rattlesnake fall, and once again panic from losing gravity, and a terrified scream echoed. That night by the campfire, Daria stroked his hair and said, "From today you will learn about soul contracts." Russell warmed himself by the fire, listening to her instructions. "Elo will help you." Elo expressed gratitude, happy to be able to help you. You bowed gratefully, thanking Miss Elo. Vassal sat by the campfire as the elf girl began guiding him slowly. "Close your eyes." Darius sat on a rock, observing the situation, Elo's voice gentle and resonant, imagining something related to fire, the crackling campfire. She suggested morning sunlight, midday, or campfire, anything would do. Then a strong flame suddenly ignited inside Jackson's body. Elo was very surprised, amazing for a human body to have such pure mana. She closed her eyes. "I will enter your subconscious and guide you." Ilo stepped behind Jackson and placed her hand on his back. In the subconscious, the girl in spirit form held his hand, leading him forward. Most people don't know who they are. Anyone can enter the soul gate, whether human, elf, or any other existence. We are all born in nature. The purpose of all existence will converge and the gates will open. Sitting outside observing, Darius was slightly surprised, sensing a strong magical flow. Elo was also curious about this flow inside his heart. A blurry image appeared, someone stabbing someone else to death. Is it hatred? Elo felt mental pain holding her head upon seeing the bloody image. Then she gradually sobered up, finding a way to continue moving forward. Wondering what this flow inside the heart really is, they stood before the soul gate, but what they had to cross was a raging river. Ilo looked at Jasper beside her. Is that hatred? Then she immediately denied it. No, maybe it's outside. Jasper lost control of his mana and an extremely hot flame burst out. Darius was startled but too late to react and stop it. It happened too fast. The person closest to the trouble was the most affected. Elo couldn't escape immediately, so she had to forcibly release mana to resist. After some unknown time, Vassal slowly opened his eyes. He saw Darius worried beside him. She asked with concern, "Are you awake?" Vassal tried to sit up and looked at the tower mistress. He held his aching head, completely unable to remember anything. "What happened?" Jazzle vaguely asked. "I feel like my mana exploded." At that moment, Elo opened the door and stepped in. He tilted his head at Miss Elo. He noticed her arm was bandaged. Ilo smiled, reassuring Jazzle, "Benefactor, I'm fine." Vassal asked somberly, questioning everyone as well as himself. "Was it my fault?" Without waiting for an answer, he covered his face, blaming himself. "I'm really sorry." That night, to relieve his gloomy mood, Vassal went out to the flower garden to watch the moon. Inside the room, Darius observed him from the window and asked Miss Elo, "Please turn around. What exactly happened?" Ilo recounted the terrifying events that had occurred. "In the depths of your consciousness, it was very chaotic. When we set foot on the path leading to the Gate of Souls, we couldn't go any further because suddenly there was a very intense flow of emotions." Darius rested his chin thoughtfully. "A flow of emotions," Elo confirmed. "Yes, it looks like a stream of hateful emotions." She made the observation, but it also seemed more like feelings of sadness. That sadness was so great, I wondered how he could have hidden it for so long. The next morning, right at the edge of the forest, next to the mansion, Darius called Russell. He turned his head and replied, "Yes, Master Tower." She smiled and arranged, "Today we'll start a new training session." Russell respectfully bowed. "If you say so, ma'am." Suddenly Darius declared, "Clean up." He was so surprised he immediately looked up. "Are you assigning me this task?" "Help the servants in the mansion for a week to clean every corner thoroughly." Vassal thought to himself in surprise, "Clean the mansion?" Darius continued, "Meanwhile, Elo and I will take a trip to the capital." Ilo politely bowed. "See you next week, sir." Vassal shyly bowed in response. "Yes, take care, both of you." Before leaving, Darius didn't forget to clarify, "This is not a punishment." "Okay? All right then, obediently bow your head and get started. You will clean and practice refracting techniques during the remaining time." Then her next words ruined his plan. "Just so you know, this week I forbid you from using magic." Feeling frustrated after Darius left, he started cleaning the mansion. First, he picked up the broom and awkwardly examined the hallway like a teenager. He grabbed the broom handle, then pushed it forward with determination. "I'll train my body while cleaning." Vassal thought to himself, "I'm just not allowed to use magic, that's all." But the consequences were truly unpredictable because the mop was still wet. He pushed it forward quickly, a wet trail behind, and then he slipped. Vassal fell backward. The mop flew up, hitting a nearby vase, which shattered with a crash. He landed on his butt. Jasper was unharmed, but the vase was broken to pieces. A servant approached from behind and asked, "Who cleans that fast?" Jasper looked up and heard the other say, "Lady Daria really treasures that vase." He suddenly remembered the Tower Master's advice. "Oh, Jasper, about cleaning. Just listen to the head maid." At that moment, head maid Dia respectfully led the servants waiting to see Darius off. Dia was a middle-aged woman with a serious face, sharp eyes, and seemed strict. And right now it was she who had just spoken. Looking at the broken vase beside him, Vassal regained composure and said, "I'm sorry." Rhea put on gloves coldly and said, "I know you're not allowed to use magic for a week." She handed Russell a cloth. "From now on, clean according to my instructions." Thus began Jasper's experience as an apprentice servant. When he picked up the vase to clean the base, Zia stood behind watching him. "You have to support the bottom of the vase with your hand." When cleaning the floor, she scolded, "Don't you think you should clean behind the door too?" Jasper turned pale. "Sorry." Zia kept nitpicking. "But it seems like you can't see the dirt on the floor, right?" Then came a series of unpleasant criticisms and nitpicks from the head maid. After a cleaning session, he sat exhausted on the floor, sighed deeply, sweating profusely, his eyes losing focus. His mind was still buzzing with Rhea's stern words. He was very clumsy with the window curtains. He felt there was nothing left to hold on to in life. Was this some kind of mental training? Before he could rest, she continued to command him harshly. "It's lunchtime. Follow me." Sitting still with no strength to move, he laughed bitterly. "Ha ha, I'll eat later." Rhea turned her head, her voice cold, no resistance allowed. "Follow me." He nervously replied, quietly on the spot. "All right." In the servants' kitchen, dishes were set on the table, and lively chatter filled the room. Vassal looked around and silently assessed. There really are a lot of people working here. Suddenly someone spoke up to start a conversation. "What's your name?" It was an elderly man with silver hair who looked quite kind. You politely answered, "I'm Ro." The old man seemed a bit surprised hearing your surname, Raymond. Lasso stiffened, feeling nervous inside. "Does he know me?" Unexpectedly, he suddenly praised you handsome, huh? Black hair and red eyes, too. The maid sitting opposite you clapped along. "Yeah, looks so cool." Suddenly, a muscular young man slapped your shoulder hard. "You look pretty strong, too. Can I have some of that strength?" "You were startled, yes, sir." The young man named Lucien laughed loudly, patted your back with a squeeze. "Just kidding." Then everyone burst out laughing again. Vasco smiled outwardly while inside he felt pain collapsed and tears fell. Just endure for a week, this must be the training. Definitely training. One beautiful sunset afternoon, the orange sky dyed red, carrying oil and wooden beams with some servants in the house. Carrying wood is heavy work. You sweat while reminiscing about your magic. If I could use the mage's body, I could finish immediately. After finishing, Russell and everyone sat down by the wooden table near the stream. Everyone chatted excitedly. "Here, take it, everyone did well." Everyone eagerly clinked their big beer mugs. "Cheers." Lucien glanced and saw Russell gulping down his beer. Without hesitation, he patted and squeezed your back, startling you and causing you to spit out the beer you had just drunk. Vasco was displeased and turned to ask, "Why did you hit me?" Lucien gave you a warning glance. "You're still a student. Drinking alcohol will make you sick, you know." Then suddenly you realized, "Oh no, I forgot I'm still a student. Thought I was still a mercenary." The old servant man smiled. "It's okay. It's okay." He poured some beer for Ro from his own glass. "You have to learn to drink slowly." He looked at the warm sunset with such a beautiful view and said, "Not drinking is a sin." At this moment, the sun slowly set behind the mountain. Warm light spread over the forest, wrapping them in a thin, pale yellow blanket. From behind came a voice that made Jackson turn around. "One more sin." Mrs. Rhea brought a basket of food, drinking beer without snacks. After she placed the food on the table, the silver-haired old man smiled. "All right, welcome the new member." Rhea looked at Jackson, who was blending in with Lucien's group. She just stayed silent, not knowing what she was thinking. Lucien put his arm around Jasper's shoulder. They laughed happily. The following days were as usual. Rhea supervised Jasper cleaning the floor. At mealtime, he happily mingled with Lucien's group. At night, sometimes he would lie down to rest beside the fountain. In the morning, he and the maids cared for the flowers and plants in the garden. Even just eating bread, Jasper would be happy without complaints. At night, he would sit dazed beside the fountain again. That's it, tomorrow marks a full week. What is this feeling of dissatisfaction? While lost in thought, someone approached from behind. You seem to really like this place. Seeing Rhea, Jasper instinctively stood up and bowed. Hello. Rhea pushed up her glasses. How many times do you plan to greet me in a day? You laughed. Cursing, haha. Do I do that often? I didn't realize. She asked with concern, why are you out here? Hesitating a bit, you looked up at the bright, starry sky. I remember someone when standing here. Gia asked curiously. I heard mages can teleport. Can't you go see them? Russell replied. Teleporting magic is difficult, and even if I could, they are somewhere I can't reach. She understood I thought mages wouldn't worry about anything. You smiled and said, that's not true. Dia turned and left, returning to her usual cold demeanor. Dia brushed her hair and smiled confidently. Even if you don't become a great mage, you can still be a good servant under me. Vassal heard this and started to feel a headache. All right, I'll remember that. Finally, the day came when Darius and Elo returned to the mansion. You're back. Tower Master Russell came to the gate to welcome the two of them. The Tower Master spoke. Are you okay? Elo also asked with concern. How are you? Russell smiled excitedly at them. I'm very well. Daria said, call Jasol, have her walk with me for a bit. The two strolled through the blooming flower garden. Daria spoke, You've worked hard this week. Jasol replied, Not at all. She shared that finding medicine to restore Elo's mana took quite some time. Elf mana is very special. Daria stopped, and I have to check something in the storage vault. Vassal sighed. She is really busy. She suddenly turned and changed the subject. This place once belonged to the Veman family. Vaso silently bowed his head without speaking. Continuing Darius. Elo said there's a powerful flood inside your heart, and that's why you can't reach your soul. Vaso clenched his trembling hand tightly. Her voice echoed in his ear. Do you feel insulted by that flood? Darius pressed, Is it anger or sadness? Russell looked down faintly and answered, Both. She continued, It reminds me of the first time I met you. A memory appeared. You fought alone to learn magic, but now thinking back, you were just a lonely noble trying to rebuild your family. Darius looked toward the mansion. Since it's so big, take this place. Vaso was startled. Huh? What do you mean? But she coldly shared, I won't give it to you for free. Darius gave him hope. Become the Fire Tower's battle mage and the warrior protecting this land. But the next words were a bit harsh. Earn a lot of money and buy this place back from me. She smiled encouragingly. Do you understand, young man? Vasco was a bit stunned. He silently repeated, Young man. Darius beamed like a flower, sincerely advising, Don't struggle alone. That night in the forest by the fire, sitting opposite each other intensely, Elo guided, Last time when I approached the soul door, I didn't awaken your subconscious. I only guided you with my mana. This time come to the door and we'll go together. He nodded gloomily, still uneasy about himself. What if I hurt you again? Ilo the girl smiled innocently to reassure him. I brought plenty of medicine, don't worry. Scratching his head in confusion. No, that's not what I meant. Elo ignored his fragile mindset and started guiding, Then close your eyes and think of fire like last time. I will awaken you in your mind. In Jasper's head appeared a pale figure he quietly called Elo. Is that you? She softly replied, Do you see me? His gaze closely examined his pale, curious hands and muttered, So this is your pure mana. Ilo led the way as before. Everything went smoothly until they stopped in front of a cliff. Below was a roaring waterfall. Ilo whispered, This flood is still here. Her voice, gentle but full of regret, still very hard to approach. Its source lies at the soul door. He stepped a few steps toward the waterfall. Elo desperately tried to stop Russell if he got near the flood, as if there was a defense mechanism preventing anyone from approaching. A force like a waterfall pushed him back, and he fell sitting on the ground. Elo sighed. Just looking at it is dangerous enough. Affected by the flood, countless thoughts flooded Dots's mind. Graduating academy, choosing the tower, restoring the family, avenging his father. He held his head. I'm sorry I can't make this disappear. Elo stood behind, comforting a confused Russell when a voice sounded in his mind. How are you, Russell? He recognized the owner of that voice, Darius. Then came a warm voice, he is a good person. Jasper could never forget this voice. Darius's maid folded her arms and smiled. She wouldn't let him be right. The respectful beard smiled and replied, exactly. Jasper's mind gradually calmed. Some fleeting memories appeared kind. Hubert patting his shoulder. Come with me for a bit. Happy times drinking beer with Lucian's group. All right, welcome the new member, was Zia's heartwarming encouragement. I don't know much about magic, but I think you're a good person. Vassal sincerely comforted Darius. Don't struggle alone. His mind couldn't hold back tears. That's right, you can't make it disappear, but Vassal stood up firmly looking at the soul door. I can leap through it. In his mind were Darius's words, think about compressing time and space. Ilo hurriedly stopped him. Don't come any closer. He gritted his teeth, enduring the flood of negativity rushing through his body with this mental strength. It's fine. Jasper stepped away from the cliff. Flames burst up at his feet, steadfast inside. Even if he falls, he is not alone. Ilo stared bewildered at the figure before him and the sparks flying in the air. Jasper's body had turned into a faint flame and vanished from the cliff. With his feet still blazing with fire magic, he had already teleported to the other side, clearly seeing that he had succeeded. Standing before the spiritual gate, Ilo happily greeted his benefactor. You did it. The timely system announced, you have completed the mission and received a medium-level mana stone as a reward. Staring at the dazzling golden spiritual gate, Vassal was stunned. I've crossed over now, what should I do? Ilo spoke up, startling Vassal slightly as no one else was visible. Please step into the lighted gate in front of you, Vassal confirmed. Miss Ilo, the elf girl, smiled and explained, you didn't expect that, did you? We can still communicate thanks to the monolink. Just then, the system appeared again with a mission notification to form a pact with a spirit. Following the elf soul Ilo's guidance, he created a pact with that spirit and earned a medium-level monostone reward. Ilo instructed, please put your hand into the gate. Vassal complied, but anxiously asked what would happen next. His soul silently reached forward. Ilo's voice whispered in his ear, now it depends on the spirit's decision. Jasper's soul fell into darkness, surrounded by watching eyes. He could still hear Ilo's voice, no one knows which spirit will come. The eyes blinked and then disappeared. You might not be chosen, Ilo prayed silently on the side for him. Just hold out your hand and wait. Outside, Daria stood seriously observing. Zaso lingered nearby, still hearing Ilo's voice. That's all I can do. Not knowing how long his soul had been waiting, Zasu thought, if it's too hard, it's okay if no spirit comes. His extended hand was aching, but he wouldn't lower it or feel discouraged. A powerful magic circle appeared, a gigantic red dragon wrapped around Jasper's soul. He was grateful for every moment that brought him here. The dragon respectfully bowed its head to touch his hand, sealing a soul pact. Moments later, Vassal struggled to open his eyes and found a tiny red dragon resting in his lap. Looking at the little red dragon with its big sparkling eyes clinging to his shirt, he was a bit surprised. Is this a spirit? Ilo, moved to tears, congratulated her benefactor. Darius laughed heartily, reminding them we have more than one reason to celebrate. Hearing that, Vassal also noticed the state of his body, a fourth magic circle spinning on his chest. Vassal recalled the moment he learned to teleport. Darius grinned widely, praising him. You have overcome your own barrier. The system appeared before him, announcing, you have acquired new knowledge on summoning spirits, and thus attained the fourth magic circle. You will receive an additional reward. Curious about the reward for completing this stage without trouble. Unexpectedly, the little red dragon had wings. It chirped a few times, then flew up and peacefully perched on his head, apparently very satisfied with this nest. Vassal looked up to see it happily nibbling on his hair. Ilo stepped forward to touch it. I don't think this is an ordinary spirit. She lifted it off his head. Do you intend to name it? Ilo brought the little dragon before Vassal. Name it, and I will complete the pact. Daria stood beside them, eagerly waiting. Give it a really good name. Vassal looked at the chubby little red dragon and thought for a moment. Red, huh? Then he said a name that stunned Darius, Zia, and Ilo as if struck by lightning. Bacon. Vassal laughed awkwardly. Ha ha, just kidding. Even the little dragon sighed in relief. He shyly thought their reactions were something else. He softly asked the little dragon, how about Pepper? The little dragon seemed to really like this name. It nodded and chirped happily. Ilo felt revived, thinking it was so adorable. Darius was pleased. Not bad. Vassal laughed along, thinking pepper was just short for pepperoni, which is also a kind of bacon. Darius spoke, "To celebrate tomorrow, we will begin the official special training. Ilo promised, I will teach you about the spirits." Hugging Pepper, lifting him up and down in his hands, Russell smiled. "I'm really looking forward to tomorrow." He looked at the cute little red dragon, officially greeted him. "Nice to meet you, Pepper." 1 month later at the academy, it was finally time for the towers to select students. A professor pondered, wondering how many graduates would be chosen this year. The bald professor chuckled, saying it was basically already decided. Outside, a white carriage stopped. A silver-haired woman stepped out. The White Tower's adjudicator had arrived. Each tower will select individuals to train throughout this semester. Then a second carriage stopped. A man dressed in yellow stepped out. The Golden Tower's adjudicator had arrived. If they aren't chosen, then who else? Next came a blond man in a blue coat. Stepping down, the Sapphire Tower's adjudicator had arrived. He was right. So we as professors of the academy should help these students more. One professor smiled and said. The bald professor nodded in agreement, continuing, "For our benefit, well, I mean for the school's benefit." The bald professor laughed, "Ha ha, yes, for the school's sake." Their conversation was overheard by Hubert, who clicked his tongue, wondering who would dare call themselves students when they only favor a few talented ones. At that moment, a strong hand grabbed the carriage door. The Fire Tower's adjudicator had arrived. The students turned pale in fear when they saw him taking a deep breath. The representative of the Fire Tower was a burly man looking quite fierce with long burgundy hair and cold eyes, vermilion Yusin. Hubert glanced over and couldn't help but swallow nervously. Why was he here? Yusin stepped down from the carriage and quickly looked around, then smirked slightly. Apparently, it wasn't time yet. Hubert worried silently from the side, thinking that sending him as adjudicator meant she didn't want to select Jackson. At that moment in this town's sky, a faint silhouette like an electric spark was using teleportation to quickly arrive. Just as Hubert anxiously thought Jackson wasn't in sight, he appeared right above. Yusin is the Fire Tower adjudicator. Unzen is very adept with fire magic. He was alert, then quickly turned to glance up on the other side. Vassal sighed in relief and wiped sweat away, standing on the rooftop opposite the academy, almost late. But before he could celebrate, his gaze caught someone below. He saw a man frowning at him. Russell was surprised. Vermilion Olsen. Without looking long, Olsen turned and entered the academy. A fierce smile spread across his face. This will be interesting. Beating him up would feel great. Going back a little earlier in front of Darius's mansion gate, Vassal greeted and thanked everyone very much. He looked at Ilo sincerely and wished her a safe return home. Ilo smiled and nodded, thanking him benefactor. Then Vassal looked at Rhea and the headmaid. She was a bit surprised to be acknowledged and heard him say, "I will definitely come back." He confidently declared, "Until then, I will be the master of this place, so please manage it well." Rhea pushed up her glasses and smiled approvingly. "We know, I hope so too." Vassal said goodbye to everyone. Though it was a short time, he truly thanked them all very much. Darius confirmed again, "Kid, you don't need a carriage." Vassal warmed up his body. "Yes, I don't want to be late, so I'll run much faster." Then she spoke up, "Then on your way back, I have a request for you." Young Darius handed him a carefully sealed letter. "Can you deliver this letter to Hubert?" Vassal took it and nodded, "Yes, I'll definitely deliver it." He noticed Darius's expression looked somewhat unhappy. "Okay, thanks, kid. Back to the present." In Hubert's sunlit office, he received the letter and spoke solemnly. Lucky the kid arrived just in time. Hubert opened the letter to read, but talked about something unrelated to the letter. However, this selection to help the kid will be quite difficult. He put the letter down because a few things just came up that he had to quickly finish, smiling gratefully. "It's okay, Professor." Hubert looked worried, frowning, hands clasped together. "All I can tell you is to remember the Fire Tower's adjudicator. He warned not to underestimate Brother Yusin." Hubert slowly stood up this selection process. He walked over and patted Jackson on the shoulder, saying the contestant needs to be the strongest, not just try their best. If it's a contestant, then they can do that. You smiled confidently. "All right, teacher, don't worry." At this moment, the system sent a new mission announcing the Tower Selection Mission show an overwhelming difference in rank and gain recognition from the Judging Council. The selection's recognition from the Judging Council is under 10 reward is intermediate mana stones. The next day in the exam room for the first round of the selection, the written test began. So you focused on the test. The written exam wasn't too hard because you had failed this test many times in your previous life. After finishing the writing, your mind drifted a bit. wondering if there was something to worry about. You thought of Darius's letter, the teacher's letter. After this incident, Professor Hubert's trips would become more frequent, almost to the point where he couldn't teach your class at the academy anymore. And soon after the year, he was granted leave. Professor Hubert Vassal stepped out of the exam room, still thinking about that, not knowing exactly what had happened. You saw a green snake on the tree approaching its prey. That could be a dangerous mission. Watching the snake catch a bird, Vassal was stunned for a moment. This was for a high-level mage in the fire tower. Just one day after the first round exam, the results showed you had the highest score in the written test. Russell Joyce was announced before the entire school, causing a stir among the trainees. Russell got the highest score. No way, he's really smart. So jealous being recognized for first-round achievements, you silently wondered if you could stop him. Because of the professor's death, there wasn't much time to think. As the second round of the selection, the interview test would begin shortly. Vassal and the trainees sat waiting in the hallway. The professors explained the rules. Enter when your name is called. Not long after the professor called Russell Raymond's name, he stood up silently, cheering himself on. You need to stop him. You can stop him. Then you quickly stepped into the interview room, because the evidence for that was right in front of you, and so stopped in the middle of the room. In your previous life, you didn't remember that Olsen would become a judge for the selection. You confidently placed your hands behind your back and looked straight at the judges. You have changed the future, so you need to join the fire tower and prevent the professor's death. Looking at Olsen glaring unpleasantly in front of you, Lasso aimed for the mission goal. You need to be recognized here. The professor in charge of documentation gave clear and detailed instructions when the judges answer briefly and verbally. Okay, understood. You replied yes. The White Tower judge read the question. We will begin. 300 years ago, the formula was created by Mage Oregon. The Q&A started. The judge asked Russell the answer must apply the concept of recycled materials to change the formula. You weren't too worried. The interview questions were even easier than those in the written test. While reading the question, the White Tower judge radiated yellow mana energy. Vassal noticed this, but there were other tasks in the second round test. The mana suddenly flared with dazzling golden light. Pressure surged, but so still stood firm. You endured the mana radiating from the selection judges. In your previous life, you always failed from this round, but this time it was different. You steadfastly answered the questions without wavering. If you changed the ingredient ratio in the potion, you could achieve triple the effect. The Gold Tower judge couldn't help but praise that kid's impressive. The kid's expression didn't even change despite being in a mana storm. Olsen smiled wickedly like a predatory beast. Is that all? A huge mana flow from him. The pressure suddenly increased several times. Vassal gritted his teeth, enduring this mountain-like pressure. Olsen smiled with pleasure but remained silent, maintaining this pressure for a while. The Gold Tower judge frowned slightly, looking at him. He really was a crazy tiger if this continued. The Gold Tower judge turned away, worried for the candidate's fate. The candidate could die. However, he was astonished to see so still standing firm. Can he endure it? Judge Thung Tap praised him surprisingly. He turned to look at the group of professors trembling under the pressure. At the next table, even the newly appointed professors in charge of clerical work were suffering. This judge silently commented on Jackson. He's definitely a genius worth admiring, calm under such great pressure. Clearly, he has been recognized by the judges. System notification recognized by the selection committee. 1/12/13/14/15/16/17/18/19/10. Unzen felt intrigued. You're still holding up. He immediately unleashed even more mana. Let's see how many times the pressure increases now. Veins bulging on his face, he gritted his teeth and stood firm, refusing to fall. Olsen seemed stimulated by his stubbornness. His gaze sharpened even more. Judge Thung Tap stood up and placed his hand on his shoulder, saying, "We still have many interviews ahead, so let's stop here." Olsen withdrew the mana storm pressure from his body, sneered and clicked his tongue, saying, "He's about to see some fun. How boring." Underneath, Jackson's hand placed behind his back trembled uncontrollably. At the next table, the new professors at the academy all breathed heavily, sharing the same thought. They survived. Judge Bok Thap put down the question sheet with a satisfied smile. "You did well, you may leave." Candidate Vassal left the room and closed the door. A professor called for the next person to come in. He went outside and flopped down on a chair to wait. From earlier until now, Vassal had shown anxiety, fear, and trembling like a little puppy. He thought he was about to die. However, his eyes suddenly brightened, recognized by the selection committee with a 9 out of 10. He breathed a sigh of relief seeing he was almost done. So saying that wasn't enough, haha, he's not easy. Along the hallway, Judge Thung Tap spoke Jackso Remen. He was walking with other judges. He said it turned out that was the candidate the fire tower master had taken notice of. Judge Kim Thap added, "He's a disciple anyone would want to recruit." "What a pity." Judge Bach. Thap suddenly asked Olson, the youngest priest, "Are you really conducting military training?" Suddenly he turned back and asked the lady aunt seriously, "Who said youngest?" She hurriedly explained, "No, I didn't mean that." The other two judges also looked at him cautiously, then fell silent. Ooze recalled the past soldiers running desperately shouting to stop the newcomers. They were extremely panicked when they saw the barrier crack. Someone said there wasn't a single crack on the barrier. A foot stomped hard into the other's stomach. The man fell down and was slashed. Screams and cries echoed. Moonlight shone in the night sky. Unse looked at the people lying scattered on the ground and lamented the weak. He showed extreme anger, but tears fell. Back to reality, Unsen thought. If they collapsed, everyone would be doomed. Scene change at the gathering place, the judge shouted, "It's time to start the third round of the test." He explained the test this time was a treasure hunt. He held up a blue mana stone and said in the vast forest on the hill, candidates must find the blue mana stone. The candidates listened attentively to the judge. He continued that the number of mana stones candidates find and bring back will determine their score. Vassal looked at them and thought. The judge ordered all right candidates line up. Vassal silently stared at the system board. He wondered if he could pass this third stage. He sighed, wondering if Olsen would recognize him. The shout started. Vassal and the candidates all moved forward. He thought first he would run as fast as he could and told himself to do his best. After a while, the sun began to set. Russell wandered around, pondering whether to summon it now. He clasped his hands together. A flame rose. He thought it would be angry at him for a moment, then calm down. Pepper was summoned and immediately clung to him. Russell looked apologetic and said, "It's been a long time, Pepper, I'm sorry. Sorry because I can't use magic at school." It looked at him and smiled happily. Vassal created a magic circle and put his hand into it. At the same time, he said to it, "Pepper, can you help me with something?" He took out a red mana stone and said, "I want to find stones that look like this." Russell brought the stone to Pepper's nose to smell it. It immediately flew off to find the stone. Russell thought about how he heard that mana world spirits can sense magical energy very keenly. He smiled and asked, "You can sniff it out already, huh?" It turned back to look at him and smiled in response. Vassal followed the direction Pepper was flying. He said, "Well then, let's go." Nearby on a tree, a red magic circle appeared. Scene changed to inside a house. A voice said, "Finally found you." Hubert grabbed a man's collar, lifted him up, and threatened him. "Where is the wizard you made the deal with now?" The man replied fearfully, I don't know, I just sold him some materials needed for alchemy. That's all I know." Hubert pressed on, "What about the alchemy formula?" The man almost shrank back. "You don't know it's a heretical ritual." Hearing that, he became itchy. Hubert pushed the man sharply against the wall. Hubert said something that stunned him. "Helping the cultists is opposing the kingdom." He emphasized, "I ask again, where did that wizard go?" The man panicked, I really don't know." He recounted, "All I heard was he secretly followed a woman. That woman was accompanied by her disciple. He was going to confirm the disciple's identity." Upon hearing this, Hubert remembered Jackson and immediately hurried away. Worried, he thought if the cultists want to confront her, it wouldn't be just her alone. He continued thinking that Jackson would also be in danger, not acceptable. Hubert hurriedly ran away, his body emitting sparks of fire. He pondered that everyone participating in the test was in danger in the nighttime forest. One participant muttered frustratedly, "Damn, what the hell is mana stone?" He thought to himself that he couldn't use light magic, because that would reveal his position. Suddenly he heard a strange sound. He saw a strange shadow in front of him and wondered, "What is that?" He immediately used wind arrow power. He approached and said, "You scared me a bit." He wondered if it was another contestant. He looked around and thought, "Is he dead yet?" After all, this was a competition. About to walk away, he paused and said, "Wait." He turned to think, what if that guy has mana stones? He stepped closer but saw nothing. While he was dazed, a shadow suddenly appeared behind him without him noticing. He muttered, "Where did he disappear to?" Suddenly panicked, he glanced behind. A scream echoed through the forest. Meanwhile, Vassal was still searching for mana stones. He stepped forward and thought to himself, "This place looks like the center of the forest. Ahead there was a black bag filled with blue monostones. Pepper was beside them. Russell exclaimed, "Here it is!" He sensed something strange and wondered why all the monostones were in one place. Russell petted Pepper. He silently thought, "That's it, you did well, Pepper." He sat down by the monostones and saw a golem core nearby. "Is this a golem core?" Vassal took it, observed, and thought, "It's been destroyed." He assessed that it seemed the golem was destroyed before it could be summoned. Who could have done it? Suddenly Pepper warned Rattlesnake. He immediately turned and saw something moving in the bushes. They were heading toward him. Rattlesnake looked shocked. Suddenly, sharp pillars of earth grew from the ground. Rattlesnake quickly flipped to avoid the attack. He slid backward and suddenly bubbles of light floated up. He thought silently from the earth magic system. He watched them fly straight up into the sky and wondered if it was actually the light magic system. Vassal immediately dodged the light bubbles. As he landed, a big explosion caused the ground to collapse. He pondered that the opponent was not just one person. Suddenly, a volley of ice arrows was shot from behind him. Luckily, Pepper reacted in time. He breathed fire, melting the ice arrows. Vassal praised, "Well done, Pepper." He raised his hand and fired a rocket arrow. They shattered the light bubbles. The bubbles burst and fell to the ground, causing explosions. From the smoke, Rattlesnake looked around. He focused on Lay slowly stepping forward. Seeing this, he asked, "Who are you guys?" He looked at him and continued, "You're supposed to be the honored trainees chosen by the tower." Alex, hiding in the bushes, also revealed himself, and Violet stepped out too. Vassal continued, "Using such a dirty, cowardly trick again, Lay." He waved harshly and cursed silently. "Why is a lowly bastard like you the one who discovered the monostone first?" He gritted his teeth, thinking, "Surely only our group knows the monostone's location. This is too unreasonable." Then he looked at Pepper and wondered, "A spirit." Violet spoke, "It's a spirit. I understand why he found the monostone so quickly." Hearing that Alex thought, "Vassal Jamin, I didn't expect there'd be someone hiding such a high-level skill." Vassal scratched his head and said, "Finding it quickly isn't anything special. You talk like I definitely wouldn't find it." He sighed and laughed. "Oh, right, that reminds me." Vasco continued, "Almost forgot. There must be some secret deal between you and the professors, right?" Lai immediately felt uneasy, thinking, "This guy's too sharp." Vasco turned and said, "Anyway, I don't intend to get involved. Just don't get in my way." Hearing that, Lai got angry. "Don't lie to yourself." But in a moment, Vasco blinked behind him and threatened, "If you're good, try it. You'll regret it." Violet was very startled. Alex was stunned and wondered, "Blink." Suddenly, Pepper growled. Russell asked him, "Pepper, you turned to look into the forest and observed, assessing if there was movement inside." Vasco said to Lai, "Did he answer? Did you ask the professors for help? Did those old guys say they'd destroy the hack golem?" He replied, "Not at all." Alex and Violet stepped forward together. "We also find this very strange." Vasco immediately became alert, turned around seriously, and said, "Something is coming." Suddenly, the birds in the forest all flew away. The forest shook violently, and the zombies rushed in. Vasco was stunned. "Zombies!" Violet panicked. "Why are there zombies in the inspection area?" Alex continued, "Impossible." Lai was equally shocked and exclaimed, "What?" He thought silently, "I must run away quickly." So he turned around, but the scene in front of him stunned him. The four of them were surrounded by zombies. He said in despair, "There's no way out anymore." Pepper flew up immediately, creating a wall of fire around the four. Lai glanced sadly and thought, "A wall of fire. This spell belongs to the fourth magic circle." He turned and directed, "From now on, each of you focus on a different direction and deal with the zombies breaking through the wall of fire in that direction, okay?" The other three looked confused. Russell shouted loudly, "Got it!" They then panicked and answered in unison, "Got it." Lai thought fearfully, "I didn't expect to pick a fight with someone like him. If we actually fight, it'll be a big loss." Watching the zombies burn, he calculated, "The firewall is only a temporary tactic. The zombies keep rushing into the wall of fire." He observed them and thought, "We need to find the mages controlling these zombies. We have to find a way out of here." A zombie rushed into the wall of fire and had half its face burned. He looked at it sorrowfully and thought, "A zombie." He pondered heretics hunting forbidden magic and the profane entities they summon. He frowned thoughtfully. In the past, the Tower Master had subdued those heretics. So are these the remnants from that event? What is their intention in coming here? Vought so suddenly startled, wondering, could they be hunting me? The zombies kept charging wildly. He bit his lip and calculated. Right now, I need to focus on fighting first. The magic we're using is a type of curse, he assessed. One feature is it consumes very little mana, so the longer the battle drags on, the more disadvantageous it becomes for me. Vasco turned back to remind the other three, everyone use your mana wisely. He continued to lower his firepower and aimed for their weak spots. Lai replied wearily. It's easier said than done, Alex added. But in any case, the judges will arrive soon if we can hold out until then. Violet interrupted, the judges won't come. Lai immediately panicked. What are you talking about? Then Vatso said he's right. You're saying it's impossible that the judges coming from the magic capital tower haven't detected this evil energy source. Violet replied, maybe they used some kind of trap to erase all signs of mana. Then he suddenly remembered the red magic circle on the tree this afternoon and wondered a trap. Hearing that, Lai trembled and lost heart, so we have to fight all these enemies by ourselves. Violet said to reduce size and increase sharpness. But he still fearfully said, damn it. What's the point of fighting with such sophisticated methods? Next to him, Alex was trying to attack the zombies. Lai looked at him and thought, what even this guy is doing that? Theo the heretic, lurking in the bushes far away, observed and said, they're smart. They've started conserving mana. The person beside him continued, those kids are copying that bastard woman's apprentice, huh? He raised his hand, creating a purple fireball. Behind him stood a giant monster wielding a hammer. He went on. But what if they encounter a situation where they can no longer conserve mana? Suddenly a loud noise made Vatso, and the others glance at the monster stepping through the wall of fire. It roared fiercely. Seeing it, Vatso and the three others exclaimed in shock, a chone. Violet immediately cast an ice spell on the chone, releasing a series of light bubbles. Alex shot a crystal beam at the chone, but apparently nothing had any effect on it. The chone growled ferociously, raising its hammer high toward Alex. He panicked looking at it. Suddenly, sparks flared, igniting the primal flame spear at maximum power. The chone dropped its hammer, its body gradually dissolving. The purple fireball in the heretic's hand shattered. He itched in disbelief. What? He asked his comrade, did he really defeat a giant chone with just one strike? Violet was stunned. She assessed that the magic just now had destructive power comparable to a 5-ring magic. She looked at him intently and wondered, is he really a fellow apprentice like me? Then Vatso suddenly realized something. Seeing Pepper flying around, he asked Pepper. The chone noticed Pepper paying attention to it and thought it was a trap. Vatso smiled and said, so you guys are hiding there. He created a fire sword and used the sorcerer's body technique. Violet looked at him in surprise and wondered, what is he trying to do? Vasco clenched the fire sword and said, now throw it with all your strength. As he threw the fire sword, he said, my turn. The fire sword was thrown with extreme force, flying like a rocket toward the two chone. They immediately panicked. We have to dodge quickly. Has our position been discovered? The blazing fire sword flew forward. The chone immediately cast a spell, hastily saying, block it. A group of zombies he summoned blocked in front of him. The fire sword flew through the zombies, shooting straight at the two chone. A huge explosion erupted right in the middle of the forest. Vasco watched and wondered if they had dealt with them. The chone emerged from the smoke, thinking silently that woman really raised a monster. He used his comrades to block the blows, saying, we've saved this move to deal with the judges. He laughed savagely, unexpectedly using it on you in the end. Vasco was shocked by the scene before him. The contestants were being taken hostage by the bone soldiers. Vasco and the three others continued to be surrounded from all sides. The bald gatekeeper suddenly exclaimed, Professor Hu, and the zinc-haired man standing beside him nervously intervened. I'm sorry to say this, but only the adjudicator is allowed inside here. So Hubert hurriedly rushed inside, calling out loudly, Senior Yuzin? But Yuzin did not turn around and replied indifferently, the mission is over. But when he heard the next announcement, his pupils widened in surprise. The cultists were also coming here. Hubert anxiously reported back, they are pursuing Russell. The candidates in the testing area are also in danger. Yuzin's face darkened with anger, a fierce aura radiating as he gritted his teeth. How dare they cause trouble right before me? Shh. Cut to the forest. Wave smiled with a dangerous green flame in his hand, threatening, if you move even a finger. The candidate was forced to kneel by the bone soldiers, a sword pressed to his neck. His face pale as he sensed the deadly aura that could end him at any moment. Wave warned, then I will kill them all and turn them into my bone soldiers. Vassal stressed, thinking he covered the candidate's mouth to stop him from casting a spell. He imagined silently calculating his moves. if he couldn't stop him even after using teleportation. In his imagination, the man still smiled smugly after being stabbed once, snapping his fingers to activate destructive magic. A bloody vision appeared in Vassal's mind. Then they will all die and turn into my bone soldiers. Confidently, he taunted, so don't try to resist, come out here. His face was tense when he mentioned him the child from the fire tower. Russell bit his lip. Yeah, just as I thought, I'm their target. He silently thought, beginning to withdraw his magic. Jazz slowly stepped out from the shadows to face the bone soldiers and wave, sneering cruelly. Impressive, can't believe you'd risk your life to save your friend. Hearing that, Jazz quickly responded, friend? That's right. Lei felt uneasy hearing the sarcasm. If you're weak, they'll call you weak. Violet also lowered her eyes, not daring to look up as Jack said, if you're strong, they will fear you. The bound contestants could only pale at those words, receiving nothing but contempt, disgust, and envy. Those guys only envy others who are stronger than them. Quay silently watched Jackson narrate. He calmly looked straight at him and said coolly, maybe you just don't understand. To everyone's astonishment, Jackson coldly explained, I do it because the duty of a guardian is to protect everyone. Wave covered his face, trying to hold back his crazy laughter, mocking, in a world where the strong hunt the weak, what duty or justice? He raised his hand, commanding the bone soldiers to advance toward him. Wave began to retort, those are just loud words from the weak. He sneered contemptuously, mocking the one hiding behind the bone soldiers, not daring to stand up for himself. Look at that. He grew angry, biting his lip to restrain himself. Wave sent a bone soldier behind Jackson, which grabbed and held him tightly. He said, yes, because you want it. The bone soldier suddenly wrapped a cloth around his mouth and tightly bound him. Wave angrily shouted, so I will kill you myself! He summoned white bones swirling around him in waves. Wave glared and growled, the kid from the fire tower. Wave held a sharp bone sword, looking smugly at Jackson, who was held tight. No, it's a pity to hear your screams, but I have no other choice. He narrowed his eyes, watching the next move, his mind racing with thoughts. There was a magic spell that didn't need to be spoken aloud. He began recalling that magic and could perform it with sheer will. In his memory, the system announced, you have completed the mission and will receive a common-grade mana stone as a reward. You have gained great enlightenment from summoning souls and reached level 4 magic. You will receive an additional reward to clarify the prize. Jackal suspiciously added a reward. A ring surrounded by lightning appeared on his hand. Jackal thought curiously, a ring, and that is the magical artifact Cloud Ring. It can transform into a thundercloud when needed. The power of the ring is unleashed and grows along with its user's development. Suddenly, thunder and lightning appeared in the sky, the sound echoing throughout the dark forest. Quay excitedly said, your death will mark the start of our revenge. As he finished, a lightning bolt streaked across the sky, frightening him. Lightning began flickering from Rattles's body. Quay looked up at the sky in shock and exclaimed, the sky! At that moment, he used his magic. A command echoed in his mind, crush them. A thunder hooves. The blinding light flashing from the sky illuminated the entire area. Powerful bolts struck down, creating terrifying pressure. That attack made everyone step back, shielding their eyes. Wave took the hit directly, screaming in pain. The blue flame orb in his hand was shattered too. Only after the dust settled could his miserable state be seen clearly. Wave was struck black by lightning. The bone soldiers he controlled also collapsed. Violet stood still. With her strong energy still radiating, she approached behind him. She gently untied the rope binding Jackson. Unable to hold back her praise, she marveled that he could think to use a magical artifact in that situation. You're really good. He calmly removed the gag and thanked Violet. Embarrassed, he scratched his head and said, we are the ones who should thank you. Regaining composure, she turned to the contestants and suggested, we need to call the judges here quickly. The chaotic scene made Violet worried. It seemed like everyone needed treatment. Lai untied a girl and warned, don't forget to tell the judges what I did for you. Alex urged them to line up and move. Under the starry night sky, Vessel calmly said, the judges will arrive soon. Violet asked, what? How do they know about this? He smiled and replied, because my friend will lead them here. Pepper actively left marks on the tree trunks to guide the way. Wherever she went, she burned a mark there. Soon after, a trail of light was lit through the forest. She admired Jasper with her eyes, thinking, how many steps ahead has he planned? he noticed something unusual. Bending down, he observed the ring on Jasper's hand weakening. He silently thought, Cloud Ring uses more mana than I expected. As Violet was leaving, Wave, who had been defeated, started to stir. Angry, he chanted the dedication spell, I dedicate to all that I do. His eyes rolled like a puppet's as he murmured, my life, my lifespan, and even my death. Then both felt the ominous aura. Quickly turning back, a mountain of white bones was summoned. They piled up and then transformed into a monster right before Violet and Jasper. A giant bone soldier was summoned. The giant bone soldier roared from above. Its eyes glowed red as it looked down at them. Its long tongue was terrifyingly extended. Jackson's eyebrows furrowed tightly. He raised his hand to shield the radiating energy. He thought quietly that this level was far beyond level 5. Seeing the situation was bad, Violet turned around and loudly ordered, Everyone run into the forest! From the side where the other students were, Lai pushed his classmates with fearful faces hurrying to escape. In his mind, he vowed, I have to escape no matter what. Suddenly, his eyes widened in amazement. He froze. Lai looked at the bags filled with mana stones and muttered, They're over by Rattles. Violet turned confused and shouted angrily, What are you doing? Why aren't you running? Rattles looked ahead and explained, He's aiming for it. You keep going and I'm the only one who can hold him off until the judges arrive. Meanwhile, on the other side, Olsen and Hubert were rushing quickly toward the battle. Back at Jackson's side, the giant bone soldier was slowly approaching him with its terrifying face and long tongue. Violet glanced at Jasper standing in front of the giant bone soldier, blocking its path. His heart couldn't help but fill with confusion. He must be out of mana by now. What is he doing? Her eyes followed Jasper's determined figure. Clenching the flame spear tightly, he silently called his name in his mind, Jasper Raymond. The giant bone soldier raised its arm into the air, then swung it down with all its might at the ground where Jackson was standing, creating a loud noise. Luckily, he quickly jumped behind the giant bone soldier, thinking to himself, Using a shield won't block this. Jackson gritted his teeth and clenched the flame spear behind him, thinking, getting hit once is already dangerous enough. He threw the flame spear fiercely toward the giant bone soldier. Its massive tail slammed into the ground, causing small cracks to appear. The whole giant bone soldier trembled. A large wound appeared on its waist, causing it to growl in pain. Vatsuo landed on the ground below, looking up at the giant bone soldier, silently evaluating. That hit him. But he furrowed his brow. Sweat dotted his face. This is too difficult. Vatsuo's annoyed voice rang out as he saw the giant bone soldier gradually healing its wound. Does it also have regenerative abilities? Suddenly its tail moved underground, catching Jackal's attention. He watched the movement curiously, thinking. The tail of the giant bone soldier was moving quickly underground toward Jackal, making him alert. Then suddenly its tail shot out of the ground toward Jackal. Luckily, he dodged just in time but couldn't hide his shock as he said, Its tail! The giant bone soldier's tail wagged in the air before Jackson, then suddenly lunged downward quickly. Seeing this, Jackson raised his hand to shield himself, frowning and muttering, Damn it! Suddenly, an ice arrow flew straight into the tail of the giant skeletal warrior, stopping its attack much to Jackson's confusion. She suddenly created many ice arrows aimed at the giant skeletal warrior. Continued, So I can't just run away and leave you behind, can I? Violet controlled the ice arrows, shooting them straight at the giant bone soldier, freezing part of its body. Her voice continued, And like you said. Suddenly, among the people fleeing, a pair of feet stopped upon hearing Violet's voice. Alex turned back. Violet's voice this time was firm. This is a mission. The others also stopped looking at each other silently. Violet, still acting as a bodyguard, started turning back toward the battle, confusing Lai. Holding tightly onto his bag, he shouted in horror, Why are you guys turning back? He angrily shouted as he saw them continuing toward the battle, yelling, Are you crazy? Still going on now. He yelled, I don't care what happens to you. On the other side, a figure lay motionless on the ground, suddenly waking up as a small stone accidentally hit Savvy. In pain, he tried to move, gritting his teeth and letting out a groan. Suddenly, his eyes widened in astonishment, his voice hesitant. Could it be that Xavier's gaze was toward the fierce battle as he uttered words about a sacrifice? Was it a giant bone soldier? He smirked mockingly, his voice full of sarcasm. Ha ha, serves him right. acting spoiled just to survive alone. Savvy saw the group of students lined up behind Jackson and said they had all formed their formation. Alex scratched his head apologetically, sorry for being late. Jackson's house was surprised, thinking his plan wasn't like this. His eyes widened as he looked back, thoughtful and silent, then he smiled as he realized something. He smiled, his gaze firm, and spoke, "Flame spear, if you want to fight, I won't stop you." Then he threw the flame spear straight at the giant bone soldier and said, "But if you want to live, if you want to win, then listen carefully to what I'm about to say." At that moment, the giant bone soldier swung its arm, breaking the ice on its body, roaring as blue energy radiated from it. Vatsuo shouted from the side, "I'll create an opening!" He gathered his strength and swung the flame spear tightly clenched in his hand, loudly commanding, "Attack with all your might." Then Vatsuo threw the flame spear powerfully toward the giant bone soldier, advancing, hitting it before it could react. Russell saw the moment it was ripe and shouted to the others, "Now!" A volley of powerful arrows shot rapidly toward the giant skeleton soldier, creating a massive explosion, the blinding light forcing everyone to shield their eyes. Following that was a thick cloud of dust. The giant skeleton soldier cried out in intense pain. So saw it slowly starting to recover and couldn't help but curse, "Damn it." He angrily gritted his teeth, clutching his trembling hand, muttering once again. Vassal tried to move his hand, focusing his mana, as he resolved once more to use the Flame Inferno spear. He thought to himself that everyone had risked staying behind to face the danger, while elsewhere Ulzen and Hubert were still rushing toward the battle. Vassal reminded himself that because of their escort's mission, they were still trying to quickly return to the battle. Jackson watched the trainees still struggling to defeat the giant skeleton soldier and reminded himself, and for his own sake. Suddenly, flames around him gradually flared up, engulfing his entire body. He silently vowed he needed to push even further. A horn sprouted on Jackson's forehead. His gaze changed gradually, his red pupils turning yellow, firmly resolved, "I have to protect them." Surrounded by flames, he gritted his teeth, gripping the spear tightly. The Flame Inferno spear, he summoned all his strength and shouted with full power. Vassal moved his whole body, aiming the spear toward the giant skeleton soldier. He opened his eyes wide as he saw his chance and immediately threw the Flame Inferno spear with great force and decisiveness. Seeing this, the others also channeled their power in unison to attack. A massive force surrounded the Flame Inferno spear, speeding forward swiftly. The Flame Inferno spear struck the giant skeleton soldier, causing it to scream in terror. The spear passed through its body, causing the giant skeleton soldier to shatter into pieces. Yuzin hurried to the battlefield and saw the contestants fighting a monster, a giant skeleton. Yuzin clenched his teeth unhappily. What are those weaklings trying to do? They should have run away, Vermilion. Yuzin believed weakness was the flaw. If one fell, all would collapse. He stood watching for a long time without intervening until a faint spark appeared in the distance. That spark shattered Ulzen's perception. The Flame Inferno spear blazed more fiercely than ever, lighting up the entire forest, dazzling the eyes. But that day, Ulzen realized the Flame Inferno spear had powerfully shattered the skull of the giant skeleton. Vassal gasped exhaustedly, and Ulzen realized it was because they were weak, that if just one stood up, the others would fight alongside him and all would rise together. A powerful explosion erupted into a blazing fire, the smoke gradually clearing. The giant skeleton fell to the ground. Inside was the face of a still-living heretic. He clenched his teeth in anger, his eyes glowing with a strange green magical light. Not yet. By his magic, the fragments gradually reassembled onto the skeleton's body. Things were far from over. He had no idea what danger awaited ahead. A foot stepped sideways to gain momentum. Yuzin condensed magic into his fist, gathering a massive power in his palm. Yuzin punched strongly toward Wave, releasing the magical power in his hand to eradicate the evil force. His power left the contestants open-mouthed in amazement, waiting for the smoke to clear. The wide, cone-shaped area before Ulzen had been leveled. That wave must have been smashed to pieces. A weak voice sounded behind him. "If you plan to come, your body's about to collapse. You should have arrived sooner." After finishing, he fainted. Behind a quick hand caught Hubert. Suddenly appearing from behind, embracing Vassal and praising him for doing well, even the strict Ulzen smiled with rare satisfaction. At that moment, the system announced a judge's approval rating of 10 out of 10. You have completed the mission and received a medium-level mana stone reward. When So opened his eyes, he saw the ceiling light above, and beside him heard Han's caring voice asking, You're awake, huh? You still look a bit drowsy, like you haven't had enough sleep. So suddenly jolted awake, are the other contestants okay? Hubert reassured him. Thanks to you, they're all safe. He sighed in relief. Thank goodness. Professor Hubert adjusted his glasses. Everyone says the same thing. If Jasper hadn't been there, they all would have died. He smiled shyly and humbly. I was helped by them too. The professor smiled kindly. But aren't you curious about the results of the competition? Vassal only then slowly realized, oh right, the selection contest. Hubert shared that actually there were many issues. Since the heretics attacked the competition area, the mission became meaningless. In this situation, cooperation is even more important than competition. So all the selection judges concluded that in this contest, the one worthy of the highest score is the student who is now announced as the winner. Russell was stunned with amazement. A feeling of joy crept into his heart. Thinking silently, scoring highest in the tower's selection, while bowing head to thank the professor. Feeling relieved inside, finally, he could graduate from the academy. Hubert continued about the heretics. An investigation has been launched to find the mastermind behind everything. Soon they will find the root of all problems. Then Vassal said that actually there is still one more heretic. The professor was startled. Isn't there only one? The remaining heretic fled when he saw the situation was unfavorable. Savy fled in anger. I will catch you and make you pay for this humiliation. The rookie at Fire Tower Yusin pushed open the door holding a package and stepped inside. Looks like I lost his trail. Russell happily. You're here, Senior Yusin. Slightly nodding, let me see how you're doing. Hubert feared Ulzen might be a disadvantage to him. Ben hesitated, telling Russell he should rest for a while, but was stopped by him. The professor smiled brightly, reassuring him. I'm fine, sir. That evening in the training yard, Russell stood facing Ulzen. He looked more lively, his usual irritated face when fighting heretics must have bored you a lot. Yusin explained the reason for having to fight those weaklings. Russell said nothing in response to that remark. He clenched his fists and continued, I think weakness is also a weakness, and that thought of mine has never changed. Here, Vassal interrupted. I agree with you, but you should lift your head and share your own thoughts. The weak exist, so the strong can become stronger and protect them. And the weak, because the strong protect them, will also try to improve themselves, Vassal concluded. So no one gets left behind, and we all move forward together. Hearing this, Yusin slightly frowned, not sure what he was thinking. Then he smirked in reply. Not bad. He tossed the package to Russell's hands. Open it. Vassal took it silently, suspicious. Opening the package, it was a cloak printed with a red rose exactly like the one on Ulzen's shoulder. The Fire Tower cloak. Ulzen nodded with a knowing smile. Don't get too excited. He said if you want to join the Fire Tower, you still have to pass one more test. Vassal was confused, wondering, but the selection contest is already over, right? Yusin squinted to explain it can be considered an ancient tradition. He used magic to draw a circle on the floor beneath Yusin. He stated the rules, try to force me out of this circle, you can use any magic you want. Confidently waving his hand, if you can make me leave the circle, you win, but if you fail, you will pay a corresponding price. Vassal looked up at him. He placed one hand behind his back, silently gathering magic. Don't regret this later. Vassal reached his hand forward as if he wasn't the one doing something behind his back. He smiled slyly. You said I could use it. Vassal was burning with fighting spirit. Red fire magic flowed around him, every kind of magic I want. The mansion suddenly shook violently. This startled Hubert, who was walking down the hallway. At that moment, Usin was also bracing himself against the attack, causing the strong aftershock. Moreover, his legs were pushed backward, making him laugh to himself, knowing he was protected by armor with at least 5th-level magic. He didn't expect to be pushed back by such a young age, yet he was still pushed back. Just then, Hubert ran over and loudly called out to the senior. What are you doing? He angrily scolded Ulzen. I didn't expect you to corner Jasper like this while his body hasn't even recovered yet. Feeling a bit guilty, caught in the act of wrongdoing, Ulzen shyly defended. This is the long-standing tradition of our fire tower. However, Hubert was blunt and said it seemed more like childish behavior. Offended. Ulzen retorted loudly. What do you mean by that, child? I'm doing this so he learns discipline before living with others. Of course, Hubert wasn't willing to lose and argued back. If he still needs your lessons on discipline, then maybe the pillars of the academy have all decayed. Then he sighed helplessly and turned to say, Sorry, Jasper, I apologize on his behalf. Jasper obviously didn't mind and smiled, replying, I'm fine. Just then, Ulzen said, Humph. Since I created this trial, the first person to surpass it, who would have thought was you, Russell? The only one to pass my violent test. Your magic surprised me as well. Using a primal magic artifact beyond the earlier explosion, and more, the blast made me lose my footing and step back. There's one more thing. I didn't expect you were able to summon a spirit. At this point, all I can say is honestly, I'm very impressed. Hubert, hearing this, asked in surprise, Russell can summon a spirit. Jackson then introduced the little spirit in his hand. Yes, its name is Pepper. Both Houston and Hubert stared at Pepper with curious eyes. They heard it let out an innocent little cry. The two old men sighed helplessly. It's quite adorable,